The story starts in a popular VR game with tons of players online. This game is called Zero Fantasy Online, but everyone just calls it ZFO. Inside this world, a giant, scary monster roars at everyone, and in front of it, a lone warrior prepares for battle. This is our MC, at level 998. He's about to be the first person to reach the game's max level. In real life, the young man clicks his mouse non-stop, completely focused. With his VR headset on, he's trying his best to win the fight. He thinks that playing for 200 hours straight was a little overboard. The young man just wanted to achieve something and leave his mark on history. But in real life, he wasn't good at his studies or at sports. He felt like he would never be number one in anything he tried. Frustrated with this situation, he clenches his fist in anger. But in the world of ZFO, he believed he could be the best of them all. Back in the game, the monster charges forward with a devastating blow. The knight, however, smiles and prepares his perfect counter-attack. He leaps into the air to deliver the final blow and become number one. But at that moment, the player feels a terrible pain in his chest. His eyes widen in shock, and his vision starts to go dark. He feels great regret, as he was so close to reaching his goal. Then, the message "You died" pops up on his computer screen. The young man ended up passing out for good in front of his computer. Suddenly, he wakes up in a dark place and sees a distant light. Slowly, his vision returns, and he finds himself in the middle of a forest. He's in a strange body when he hears a desperate scream. Someone screams for a goblin to stop attacking their friend on the ground. But the green monster mercilessly tramples the man. At this, the other villagers run in desperation, fleeing from the monsters. The MC is shocked because he recognizes the goblin as being from the game ZFO. While he's thinking, a man with a pickaxe attacks the monster from behind. The villager lands a hit on the monster's head, but it doesn't do much damage. With that, the creature turns around, annoyed, and reveals itself as a level 7 fire goblin. The level 1 farmer is terrified by the huge power difference between them. Meanwhile, our MC realizes that he can now actually feel his body for real. Then it all clicks, and he realizes he's been reincarnated into the world of the game ZFO. With this discovery in mind, he immediately decides to check his status. A blue screen appears, showing his name is Alan, and he is at level 1. The young man is disappointed, as he was so close to being the first to reach the max level. At that moment, one of the villagers calls him an adventurer and asks for his help. The man desperately yells for the young man to save them from the monsters. The MC finds it strange that an NPC recognized him and is asking for his help. This means that, just like in the game, this world has a main storyline. He then asks them to wait a moment, as he's going to set his class right now. The villager is shocked and says it's impossible for a level 1 to beat that goblin. The young man agrees with him and wonders how he's going to defeat the creature. He looks at the class selection screen, thinking it will be difficult with a normal one. Among the options, he sees one called Crafter, which only has one skill. The young man remembers that in the game, this was considered the worst class of all, but he has a plan because the game's setting has now become his reality. With this, he believes he can use a specific feature of the Crafter class. Without hesitating, the young man touches the screen, and his class is set to Crafter. A blue light surrounds him, and he decides to test his new ability. The protagonist then concentrates and activates the skill called Craft. An energy cube forms in his hand and starts to change shape rapidly. Suddenly, an assault rifle appears in his hands, ready to go. He smiles, satisfied that his ability to create things worked perfectly. He remembers when he studied to become the most brilliant mind in the world. His knowledge was so vast that he even understood the structure of a fighter jet. The villagers are shocked, as they've never seen a weapon like that, and question his class. The MC then realizes that even in this world, the Crafter class is underestimated. As the new monster arrives, the young man puts his finger on the trigger again. He then fires over the villagers' shoulders to protect everyone. Aiming carefully, the young man hits the smaller goblins that were approaching. The creatures are hit dead on by the shots and have no time to react. The two men from the village look at the scene in complete shock. After that, the protagonist blows on the tip of the weapon like a pro. He realizes he can bring any modern weapon into this medieval world. That's why the young man believes the crafter class is the best of all. The villagers still don't understand how a level 1 defeated a level 7 goblin. They look at the adventurer and wonder what just happened there. The young man then offers his help so they can defend themselves on their own. At that, one of their weapons glows with an intense, blue, magical energy. The two men hold the rifles and are impressed with the creation. They then thank the young man for giving them such powerful equipment. One of the villagers worries about the chance of accidentally hitting an ally, but the young man says there's no danger because he put a restriction on the weapons. To prove his point, he fires in the direction of one of the villagers. Using his creation ability seems to drain a bit of his energy. The bullet bounces off the man's arm without causing any kind of injury. With that, they are filled with confidence and start shooting at the monsters. The creatures don't stand a chance against the firepower of the assault rifles. The young man watches the scene with a calm and very satisfied look. Suddenly, a level up screen appears, and he goes up to level 2. A chart explains that the experience is shared with the weapon's creator. After the battle, the villager hands the magic stone to the protagonist. He looks at the item and recognizes it as the stone from a fire-type goblin. These magic stones seal the monster's power and can be sold at the Adventurers Guild. Their energy is extracted for various uses. Suddenly, one of the men screams in fear and points forward. A giant goblin with armor and a shield appears before the group. The young man recognizes the creature as a very powerful boss class monster. A screen reveals it's a level 13 goblin knight, much stronger than the others. Even so, the villagers feel confident and start shooting at the monster, but the bullets ricochet off the goblin's shield without doing any damage. The creature then smiles and mocks them, as it doesn't even feel a tickle from the attacks. With that, the men from the village are in shock, as their shots don't work. The MC realizes that at his current level, it will be hard to create a weapon strong enough. Without wasting time, the goblin knight charges, running toward them. Desperate, the villagers yell for the young man to run, or he'll end up getting taken out. He then grabs the magic stone and remembers he can use it for crafting. At that, the monster attacks with its club, but the young man already has a plan in mind. While dodging, he wonders if he can consume items as crafting material. So, he decides to test this theory by using the magic stone with his ability. An intense blue light surrounds the item, and a new piece of equipment begins to form. In seconds, a powerful rocket launcher appears in his hands, ready for use. The young man smiles, because using the magic stone as a material gave it a special effect. Sometime later, a giant stone golem appears in front of him out of nowhere. The adventurer, now level 13, just wanted to test his new creations in the forest. He just didn't expect to find a level 20 stone golem so soon. Even so, he doesn't hesitate and starts firing his assault rifle at the creature. The shots hit the stone monster dead, but don't seem to have any effect. Small, smoking holes appear on the golem's body where the bullets hit. To the young man's surprise, the stone giant begins to regenerate rapidly. In a short time, the golem is as good as new, without a single scratch on its body. The MC realizes that besides having an absurd defense, the monster also regenerates. He understands that physical attacks won't work, and he needs a new strategy. With a plan in mind, the young man decides to create an attachment for his weapon. Activating his ability once more, a bright blue light surrounds him again. A new item starts to materialize in his hands, ready to be used. The attachment fits perfectly onto his rifle, increasing its attack power. He thinks that if he loads a magic stone into the weapon, the power will increase a lot. With the right modification, he believes he can boost his rifle even further. Then, the young man opens his inventory to get the item he needs for the plan. From it, he takes out a golem magic stone that he found along the way. The young man fits the gem into the new slot on his weapon and decides to test it. At that, the stone begins to glow with an intense light, releasing its energy. The boy watches carefully as the magical power flows throughout the entire rifle. The weapon starts to transform and takes on the appearance of solid rock. Now, his equipment has a piercing effect, thanks to the magic gem. He's very satisfied because the effect ignores the physical defense of enemies. At that moment, the giant golem roars and prepares to crush the adventurer. But the young man aims with his new weapon and prepares for the counter-attack. Without hesitating, he fires a burst of shots in the direction of the stone creature. This time, the projectiles pierce the monster's armor, causing a lot of damage. The young man keeps firing without stopping, with his eyes completely focused on the target. The stone giant begins to crumble under the power of the piercing shots. With that, a huge explosion occurs, and the creature is finally defeated. After the dust settles, he levels up to 14 and feels satisfied. He notices that the magic stone in the attachment broke after being used. The MC then kneels and picks up the new gem that the golem left behind. Upon picking up the item, he levels up once more and reaches 15. A notification says that the villagers fought off a horde of orcs on their own. The young man has traveled to several villages and handed out weapons for everyone to defend themselves. With this, he gains experience passively while also helping those in need. Elsewhere, we see the imposing headquarters of the Adventurers Guild. Inside, someone comments about a rookie who is leveling up very quickly. A woman looks into a magic mirror and is shocked by the information. Two men can't believe that someone went from level 4 to 15 in a matter of days. The mirror then reveals that the mysterious adventurer's name is Alan. She is even more surprised to find out that his class is Crafter. One of the men says he recorded the rookie's last battle with his familiar. Then, the image of Alan against the golem appears, and everyone is in shock. In the video, the young man fires his rifle, and no one recognizes that weapon. They've never seen anything like it, and remember the stone monster's defense. But the creature is easily destroyed by the adventurer's firepower. Someone comments that his attack power is equivalent to that of a level 50. This doesn't make sense, because crafted weapons are supposed to be weaker than normal ones. They don't understand the logic but agree that the young man is on another level. With that, a man with glasses decides to report to the master about this vessel. At that, the crystal ball shows that Alan has started a new fight against a boss. This time, he's facing a level 27 sandworm in the desert. The young man thinks the monster is perfect for testing the limits of his new creations. He thinks about how to increase the firepower of a small weapon with attachments. So, the young man decides to use the golem magic stone he just got. Activating his ability, the magic item begins to transform in his hands. A pistol appears with a power bonus of 55% from the fusion. He is satisfied with the incredible option and decides to add one more item. The adventurer then attaches another magic gem as an extra accessory. The new piece begins to glow and infuse the weapon with a bluish energy. His pistol is now an ice weapon with much higher attack power. The young man smiles, because if the shot isn't enough, the enemy will freeze. With the giant monster coming toward him, he thinks there's no way he can miss. He then aims the new weapon and fires an ice projectile at the creature. The bullet hits the worm dead on, and the ice effect activates instantly. The power of the shot begins to freeze the monster's body rapidly. In seconds, a huge frozen hole forms in the sandworm. The young man watches the scene with a serious look, very focused on the result. The upper part of the creature becomes completely frozen by the attack. Suddenly, the ice begins to crack and break into several pieces. The monster's body shatters, and the young man looks at his weapon, satisfied. He's impressed by the fact that a pistol can take down a boss like that. At that, the young man smiles, because now he's sure the crafter class is the best. After the battle, he picks up the new magic stone that the creature left behind. With the item in hand, he decides to go back to the city and sell it for money. Arriving at the Adventurers Guild, the young man goes straight to the exchange counter. The receptionist is shocked by the number of items and asks for his name. The young man calmly replies that his name is Alan, making the woman nervous. She recognizes the name and is stunned to see the famous rookie in front of her. Flustered, the employee asks the adventurer to wait a moment and runs off. He doesn't understand anything and wonders what all the fuss is about. Suddenly, he hears hurried footsteps and sees knights approaching him. In seconds, the soldiers surround the young man leaving everyone in the place confused. The leader of the group then says that Alan is under suspicion for something serious. The boy still doesn't understand the situation and asks what they're talking about. Without warning, magic chains appear out of nowhere and restrain the adventurer. The soldier informs him that he will be taken to the guild headquarters immediately. The protagonist gets very annoyed with all this senseless confusion. At the guild headquarters, he is taken to a large meeting room. A man orders them to release him, and the magic chains vanish into thin air. He apologizes for the scare and says he was curious about his rapid progress. The master felt he needed to speak with the rookie, no matter what. The young man responds sarcastically and asks what they want with him. A guild member then asks the young man to give details about his weapon. Alan replies that they wouldn't understand since he uses technology from another world. Another person present scoffs and says he talks big for a simple crafter. He continues to provoke him and questions if the young man's weapon is that special. The MC realizes they are trying to annoy him into giving up information, so he says that he wants to be the first to reach level 999. The guild leader is surprised by the answer and asks the young man to wait. He asks if the adventurer's ultimate goal is to defeat the Demon King. The young man says yes, and that this would also help the guild, since the Demon King's army is a problem. The master agrees and says that humanity is facing a crisis never seen before. He even mentions that recently an important city was completely destroyed. Alan states he'll handle it someday, but tells them to make an appointment next time. When he turns to leave, the guild leader asks him to wait a little longer. Already annoyed, the adventurer asks what they want with him this time. The man then suggests that to level up faster, he should join a clan. He explains what it is and offers to introduce him to an A-rank clan. At that moment, another guild member butts in and complains that he's getting ahead of himself. The other says that his clan is better and that they explore high-level dungeons. Then everyone in the room starts arguing to see who will recruit the rookie, but the young man interrupts the fight and says he doesn't want to join any clan. Disappointed, they tell the young man to let them know if he ever changes his mind. The boy simply says goodbye and leaves the meeting room. The two guild members comment that he's a very difficult guy to deal with. They look at one of the weapons and wonder how a crafter created something like that. The guild then decides to call the best blacksmiths in the country to analyze the item. Elsewhere, we see a rocky mountain with a dungeon and many people. This is the entrance to the Wolf Mine dungeon, and several adventurers are there. Alan walks through the crowd and notices how busy the place is. A man calls out to him and asks if he'd like to join his group, but upon seeing that the young man's level is only 15, the guy is quite surprised. He apologizes immediately and runs off, saying he forgot what he was going to say. The man grumbles that a rookie shouldn't be in a level 25 dungeon. The MC thinks that he's only here because of the level difference bonus. This system gives more experience for fighting much stronger monsters. Suddenly, the adventurer hears a girl's desperate scream nearby. He sees a group of men trying to force a young woman to go with them. The group's leader is named Lucas, and he wants the priestess Emma to join their team. The people nearby mention that the guy pressures women into joining his party. Everyone is afraid because the swordsman's level is very high, and he attacks without thinking. The priestess yells for them to stop because she only wants a party with people at her level, but the man scoffs at her and tells the girl to take advantage of the situation. The whole group smiles in a strange way and says this will be good for them too. Suddenly, a blue aura appears and surrounds Lucas, leaving him very confused. At that, a bolt of lightning strikes him, and the swordsman gets a very strong shock. A bronze statue in the shape of a hand rises from the ground and knocks the man down. Alan approaches the young woman and apologizes, saying it's hard to control. He says with a straight face that his creation ability missed its target. The swordsman on the ground writhes in pain and doesn't believe the mistake excuse. He gets up furiously and threatens the protagonist for attacking him like that. The young man says he was just testing his ability and that the guy was in the right spot. The man gets even more irritated with the young man's audacity and curses at him again. Without a second thought, the the swordsman draws his sword and prepares for a fight. But upon looking closer, he realizes the adventurer is at level 15. His friends mock him for picking a fight with a low-level rookie like that. Lucas then says it would be embarrassing to fight with trash and decides to let him live. The girl thanks him for his help, and the two start to walk away from the group of idiots. She says that he saved her, but the young man replies that's not quite what happened. Suddenly, the swordsman shouts and says their conversation isn't over yet. He says he spared his life, but he didn't say he would let him walk away in peace. The MC turns around and asks what the man plans to do now with the two of them. The swordsman then points to the dungeon and proposes a competition between them. The contest will be to see who can clear the dungeon in the shortest amount of time. He says that if he wins the bet, he'll beat up the rookie until there's nothing left. The priestess complains that it's not fair because of the huge level difference. The swordsman then says that if he wins, he'll claim the young woman as his prize. The girl is completely terrified by the man's sick proposal. The protagonist accepts the challenge and says that in return, if he wins the bet. But then the young man says that he actually doesn't need any reward. The other adventurer smirks and says there's no chance of him coming out victorious. The MC then touches his own hair and thinks for a moment about the whole situation. He thinks that the prize wouldn't be a big deal coming from a weakling like that. The swordsman becomes furious with the young man's taunt and clenches his teeth in rage. He understands that the rookie is just an arrogant fool who doesn't know his place. In front of the dungeon, the priestess tells him the place is too dangerous for him. She reminds him that the recommended level is 25, and he is only at level 15. But the young man replies that it is not a problem because he already planned to hunt there. As they approach, the swordsman asks if he is going in alone. He then suggests the guy recruit some newbies to form a party. The protagonist shoots back that a level 65 can't do anything without his crew. At this, the swordsman gets very angry at the adventurer's provocation. The boy ignores him and says he doesn't care if he hangs out with his friends. Suddenly, the girl runs toward him and offers to join the mission. With that, a party invitation screen appears in front of the protagonist. The guy looks at the notification and seems to think for a brief moment. He then declines the priestess's invite, leaving her quite shocked by his attitude. The girl doesn't give up and starts begging him to let her tag along. She says she feels responsible and can't let him go into the dungeon alone. The adventurer gets a bit annoyed and thinks that this woman is very stubborn. Without much choice, he sighs and finally agrees to accept her help. With a tap on the screen, the priestess's party invite is accepted. The girl breaks into a huge smile and thanks him a lot for the chance to help. The swordsman then yells at the young man not to let the girl get taken down in there. His group smiles in a weird way because they want to give her a hard time later. This makes the priestess uncomfortable with their nasty comment. Without wasting any more time, the guy touches the dungeon portal to start. At the entrance, a panel shows the time record, which is 19 minutes. The protagonist smiles confidently and says that with his current power, it will be very easy. Then, the two step into the portal to start the dangerous time trial. Inside, they find a horde of monsters waiting for an attack. Several bats, caterpillars, and undead warriors appear in their path. The girl gets worried about the number and the high level of the creatures, but the young man says it is not a problem because they are just a bunch of weaklings. He then asks the girl to put her staff away because it is getting in the way. The guy says that since she joined the party, she will have to fight too. With that, he uses his skill, and a blue aura surrounds the two of them there. Suddenly, two submachine guns appear in the priestess's hands. She is startled by the weapon, and the adventurer says only he can create it. The young man explains that using it is quite simple, and she just needs to aim at the enemy with a serious and focused look. He tells her to just pull the trigger. Then the protagonist starts firing his weapon and hits several monsters at once. The girl is amazed, and the guy tells her to stop staring and fight. She then starts shooting, but the recoil makes her lose control completely. Alan explains that he made the recoil strong on purpose, so she would hit everyone. He says the chatting is over, and now they are heading straight to the final boss. Somewhere else, The swordsman fights the mine monsters with his sword. After defeating the creatures, his group gathers to rest a bit. One of the members comments that the leader was pretty mean to the rookie adventurer. He says the dungeon summons an extra boss on someone's first time. The swordsman then smiles and admits that this is why he provoked the guy. He believes the rookie won't even get close to the first boss. Lucas also says that even if the boy makes it there, he will end up being defeated. He gets annoyed remembering he was made a fool of and wants Alan to fail miserably. Meanwhile, the adventurer and the priestess arrive at the boss room. The guy sees that not even 10 minutes have passed, and the girl is shocked by the time. He then complains that if she hadn't fallen for the traps along the way and also gotten stuck in another wall, they would have taken half the time. The girl apologizes, saying this is her first time in a dungeon. At that, the young man levels up 3 times and reaches level 18, feeling satisfied. Emma only leveled up once, and the guy realizes the villager's bonus is huge. The girl tells him to stop getting distracted, or they will lose the bet. With that, the two get ready to enter the powerful boss's room. When they open the door, a sinister purple energy takes over the place. The priestess looks inside the room and is terrified by what she sees. 2 energies, one purple and one yellow, appear in the boss room. The first monster is a werewolf queen at level 25, and the second is a werewolf king, also at level 25. Alan remembers there is an extra boss, and the girl complains that he didn't warn her. The 2 creatures then start attacking each other with great fury, but shortly after, they charge toward the 2 adventurers. The guy thinks that werewolves are fast and hard to hit with guns. He then asks the priestess to lay down some cover fire to buy time. The girl obeys and starts shooting with her 2 submachine guns, but the 2 monsters dodge the bullets with incredible speed. Emma realizes her attacks are not working and becomes desperate. The young man finds the situation a bit problematic because the enemies split up. He tells the girl to handle the queen while he faces the powerful king. The bullets keep missing the creature, which dodges with ease. The priestess can't believe they can dodge every single shot. With that, the queen gets ready to attack with her sharp claws. The creature jumps toward the girl to deliver the final strike of the fight. The protagonist smiles because he had already predicted this entire move. The girl screams in fear as the werewolf is about to attack her. Alan then activates his creation skill. Once again in the battle, blue energy circles appear on the feet and hands of the 2 creatures. With a serious look, the guy gives the order to capture the monsters. Magical bear traps snap shut and lock the werewolves in place. The 2 beasts scream in pain and can no longer move around the area. The priestess is shocked and wonders if they really stopped. The adventurer says he just needed her to buy a little time. Emma is amazed because she didn't know the skill could be used like that. The guy feels happy for having tested his ranged creation earlier. With the monsters trapped, he approaches to finish the battle. He creates a pistol and says a werewolf that doesn't dodge is just a regular mob. The werewolf king tries to break free from the trap, but can't move an inch. With that, the guy points his weapon at the defenseless creature on the ground. With a cold look, he says goodbye and prepares for the final shot on the beast. After defeating the monster, he picks up a purple crystal that dropped from its body. The adventurer then turns around and looks toward his teammate. At that moment, the priestess runs over and says she also managed to defeat the queen. Then, a system screen pops up showing they broke the place's record. The young man says the job is done, and now they can finally go back. Walking out of the portal, they see the villagers, who thank them a lot for the help. The girl asks about the weapons, and the guy says she can keep them. The swordsman's friends see the 2 and notice that only 10 minutes have passed. They think the duo gave up and is running away to avoid meeting the other group. The protagonist then asks what they are talking about and says they are already done. With a mocking smile, the 2 adventurers tell him to stop lying. The young man then tells them to check the crystal since a new record was set. The swordsman's friend doubts it and says his joke isn't funny at all. He also says the guy has no level and that his class is garbage. With a smile on his face, he touches the crystal to prove the young man is lying, but instantly, his face changes to an expression of pure shock. The crystal shows the record of 9 minutes and 48 seconds. Shocked, one of them falls to the ground, and the other doesn't understand how it was possible. The protagonist surrounds himself in a blue aura and says he will give a special tip. He then uses his skill and creates several weapons right in front of everyone there. One of the guys holds the weapon and wonders what kind of gear that is. The screen shows the attack power is 153, which is very high. The priestess smiles and explains that the weapon is very easy to use. She says you just need to aim at the enemy and pull the trigger. With that, the girl starts shooting, and the guys are amazed by the power. One of the adventurers turns to the young man and asks who he really is, but when he tries to speak, the guy had already vanished from the spot. Meanwhile, the crowd gathers to see the weapons, and the adventurer walks away. The guy thinks that staying there any longer is just a total waste of time. With that, he turns his back on the crowd and decides to leave the place. In the middle of everyone, a white-haired girl watches the young man walking away. She seems very interested in the guy and his weapon creation power. A few minutes later, the swordsman's group finally exits the dungeon. He brags, saying they almost broke the 50-minute mark. Then, the group sits down to wait for the rookies to come out of the dungeon. His friends laugh and say the two must already be eliminated inside. One of the other adventurers walks up to talk to the swordsman. He lets him know that the swordsman's opponents have already gone home. Lucas gets furious and wonders if the two guys ran away scared of him. His group starts laughing and says the leader was completely fooled, but the other adventurer says that's not exactly how things happened. The swordsman doesn't understand and says they were faster than his group. The guy explains that they weren't just faster, but they broke the record. With a shocked look, the swordsman can't believe what he just heard. He then runs toward the crystal and says, "This is impossible to happen." Not believing a word, he touches the crystal to see it with his own eyes. The panel then shows the new record of 9 minutes and 48 seconds. He remembers his group took almost an hour to clear the dungeon. One of his friends calls out to him to see if he is okay after the news, but the swordsman starts freaking out because he can't accept being outdone. He throws himself on the ground and yells that it is impossible to have lost to them. Somewhere else, a mysterious person is sitting in an office. This shady figure seems to be reviewing some important documents. He looks at a report about the guy and his new record in the wolf mine. With that, he realizes the young adventurer is the right guy for the job. Suddenly, a hooded mercenary enters the room to get an order. The mysterious man asks if he heard the request he had for the group. The shady figure confirms the mission and the request from his powerful boss. He then points to the report and shows the young adventurer's photo. The mercenary says the target seems like a really troublesome guy to deal with. With that, the boss tosses a bag of cash and says the reward will be huge. The mercenary then taps the photo and gets ready to receive the final order. Without hesitating, the mysterious figure orders him to eliminate the guy. Somewhere else, the priestess thanks the young man for all the help she received. The guy asks if she really needs to run away and offers to help, but the girl refuses because, as an adventurer, she can't rely on him so much. With that, the young man understands her decision and says goodbye to his companion. She asks him not to break the record because she wants her name in history. Then, the girl says they should meet again and leaves his party. Days later, the protagonist goes to a deserted place to test his skill. He uses his creation and hopes the plan works as expected. Successfully, a battle tank appears and its exterior looks perfect. The guy then climbs into the vehicle to test the internal controls. Inside, he sees that the controls were perfectly recreated. With a smile on his face, the adventurer commands the tank to move, but the vehicle doesn't move, and he realizes it needs fuel. His skill creates anything, as long as he understands the structure. But the creation doesn't work with things like water or electricity. The young man is not shaken because he expected this and has a solution. Inside the tank, he touches a component of the power system. In the world of ZFO, magic stones are used as a power source. This means he can use the stone to power his creation. He then realizes his creations can run on the stones. With the new power source, the tank's treads start turning. The vehicle then moves forward at high speed through the desert ahead. Pleased with the result, the guy celebrates the success of his test. After the test, the tank stops in the middle of the desert, and the young man watches. Suddenly, the magic stone inside the tank shatters into several pieces. The young man is startled because all the energy was consumed in a single instant. He steps out of the vehicle and realizes he still doesn't have the power to control the tank. The guy understands he needs better stones, but is happy with the test. With that, he decides to try something smaller and uses his creation skill. This time a voice-controlled Recon drone appears in front of him. The adventurer then places a new magic stone in the drone's compartment. With the power on, the object starts flying, and he wonders about the battery life. The guy commands the drone to fly up and record everything around the desert. He smiles because the device's performance is at a very acceptable level. The young man thinks that if he puts a weapon in place of the camera, it becomes a weapon. He then grabs a tablet to take a look at the recorded footage. The protagonist notices the recording turned out much better than he imagined, but suddenly he pauses the video when he spots something weird on the screen. He sees a group of people watching and wonders if they are after him. The guy remembers the guys from the mine and notices their strong, hostile intent. Not liking the situation, he decides to go straight up and ask what they want. At that, one of the mercenaries warns that the target is approaching the group. Another hooded guy doubts he was seen because of their stealth skill, but the protagonist yells and calls out the 5 hiding in the rocks. With that, the 5 mercenaries are shown watching the young man from afar. One of them asks the boss what they should do now that they've been spotted. One of the group members gets worried about the weapon's attack speed, but the leader says the guy's weapon can't cause damage to humans. The young man shoots back that the mercenary got the whole situation wrong. At that, the boss corrects him and tells them to stay on guard because the target is dangerous. The adventurer then says he doesn't like hide and seek and tells them to come out. The group leader then appears and says they were caught off guard. With that, the 5 mercenaries reveal themselves and stand in front of the protagonist. The guy stares at the group and asks what their goal is there in the desert. The leader of the hooded men tells the young man not to stare at the group like that. He then reveals that their goal is simply to eliminate the guy. With that, the young man notices that the 5 enemies have vanished from his sight. He thinks they are 5 guys with very high stealth skills. The guy feels lucky to have chosen a very fast, firing weapon. Just then, one of the mercenaries appears and calls him a fool because the weapon won't hurt him, but suddenly, he is hit by a shot and is very shocked by the attack. Without wasting time, the young man starts firing his weapon at the enemies. With that, several shots hit the other mercenaries who weren't expecting it. With a focused look, he keeps shooting to defeat all the enemies. In a few seconds, the other members of the group are also hit by the shots. With the 4 on the ground, he says challenging someone armed was a terrible idea. The guy also comments that they should have come up with a much better plan. The protagonist understands the reason for the direct attack, and the leader doesn't get it. The young man explains that his weapons normally have a safety restriction, but since the group looked suspicious, he took the safety off for the battle. At that, the group leader is hit in the legs and falls to the ground without reacting. The guy warns that with the safety off, anyone who gets hit won't make it. The mercenary kneels on the ground, totally defeated by the young man's weapon. The adventurer then points the weapon at the mercenary leader's head. He then asks why he was the target and orders the enemy to tell the truth. The mercenary replies that they just eliminate whoever is the target of the job. The young man asks who the client is, since he doesn't recall making any enemies. The mercenary says maybe the guy hasn't done anything wrong to be the target. He reveals that the young man is too strong, and some big shot didn't like that at all. The adventurer asks what he means, but the mercenary bites something in his mouth. With a smile, he says he is also a professional and can't say anything else. With that, he starts feeling sick and ends up falling lifeless on the desert floor. The young man looks at the body and realizes the mercenary took poison to take himself out. He steps back and thinks about being called strong even though he is at level 24. Suddenly, A voice praises him for turning the tables on the mercenaries. The guy looks toward the rock and asks who is there, and if they are one of them. The girl then climbs down the rock and says he has got to be kidding. With her arms crossed, she claims that she is actually on the young man's side. The protagonist stares at her with a serious look, very suspicious of the situation. He thinks he is strong but doubts anyone would be scared of such a low level. A mysterious voice praises him for defeating a group of veteran mercenaries. He then turns around and asks who the person is, and if they are with the enemies. The girl in red boots climbs down the rock and says of course she isn't. She crosses her arms and claims that she is actually on his side in this fight. Even so, the adventurer remains skeptical and stares at her seriously. The girl then suggests they team up, because it would be a good deal. But the guy refuses and says he doesn't need companions now or ever. He remembers the priestess and thinks there might be a single exception. The girl asks him not to be so defensive and to hear what she has to say. She then reveals she has an idea of who hired the mercenaries after him. Surprised, he asks who it is and asks her to confirm one thing first. The girl confirms he is Alan, who broke the wolf mine record. The young man explains that she asked because his stats were hidden from everyone. He opens the menu and says fame is annoying, so he changed the settings. With his stats visible, the adventurer asks if she can see them now. The girl is shocked to see that his level is only 24. She remembers that from afar, she thought he was at least level 80. The guy then asks her to show her stats, to make it a fair trade. The screen shows that sorceress Melissa is currently at level 50. With that, the young man asks who hired the mercenaries to take him out. The girl replies that she can't give that valuable information away for free. He glares at her angrily because he understands she wants something in return for the answer. Melissa confirms it and says that if he helps her, she will tell him everything she knows. The protagonist looks thoughtful and wonders what kind of help she needs. With that, the sorceress tosses a stone in the air, and the guy is left completely confused. She reveals she wants help going to the Crystal Sky Castle, a level 50 dungeon. The girl warns that it is not a normal dungeon, because its difficulty is one of the highest. Inside, there are many monsters and bosses that spawn completely at random. The place is full of traps that catch even the most experienced adventurers off guard, and deep within the place is the Crystal Dragon, a boss on a whole other level. The young man then asks if what she wants is help clearing that dungeon. The girl says she will give him the info if he hands over the Jade Dragon orb that drops from the boss. The guy thinks this orb is top-tier material for someone at the sorceress's level. Melissa then asks whether or not he will accept the deal she just proposed. She thought a level 24 wouldn't be able to do it, and only agreed to ask. But the adventurer accepts right away, and the girl is shocked by his quick response. Annoyed, she asks if he was listening to what she said about the dungeon. The sorceress yells that the recommended level is 50, and the area is very dangerous. The young man replies dismissively that he knows that, and probably knows more about the place than she does. He remembers having cleared this stage 10 times, and that he needs to get rid of whoever is after him. Melissa then says she doesn't mind as long as he accepts the proposed job. With a gesture, she gets ready to seal the deal with her new teammate. Alan says that since it is settled, they can go, but she denies it right away. With an annoyed look, the girl says that unfortunately, they can't do that just yet. The guy then turns around and asks the adventurer what the reason for not going is. The sorceress explains that there are 2 reasons, and the first is how to reach the castle. She says they need to go through a teleportation rite, and the young man gets confused. He remembers that in the game, he just had to talk to an NPC to be teleported to the location. The girl then warns him that he doesn't meet the requirements to participate in the ritual. A panel shows that level 40 is required, and the guy is excluded by the rule. The young man asks why she invited him, and the girl says she wouldn't have asked him if she had known. Not caring about that, he just asks what the second reason for the delay is. The sorceress replies that it is obvious, just the 2 of them aren't enough for the mission. She explains that to fight in the dungeon, they need a tank to withstand the attacks. The girl continues and says they would also need an attacker with a lot of damage. She explains that as a sorceress, her attacks are area of effect and not focused on a single target. With that, his priority is to level up, and she says she is in no rush for the mission. The sorceress says this is a problem, because she is in a hurry, and he asks the reason. Surrounded by a blue aura, he reveals he wants to be the first to reach level 99. With a determined look, the guy says he has no time to waste on trivial things. The girl says it is good to have dreams, but the only option is to level up to 40. The guy agrees and says the teleport's level restriction is a real problem. He then looks at the castle in the sky and thinks not even flight magic could reach it. After thinking a bit, the young adventurer seems to have had a great idea. He says they can reach the castle without the ritual, and the girl doesn't understand. The young man uses his skill and says he will explain later, but first, he will run a test. A drone appears, and the girl asks how it works, and the guy explains it is a magic drone. With his arms crossed, the guy gives the order for the drone to fly up to the castle in the sky. The sorceress is impressed, and the young man says it is technology from another world. He watches the drone and wonders if there is any barrier on the way to the castle. Without any trouble, the flying object keeps getting closer to its target in the sky. With a focused and attentive look, the protagonist waits to see the test result. The drone lands successfully, and the guy confirms there is no barrier in the area. The girl is shocked because she can't believe they can get there without using the ritual. She then suggests he create a giant drone and that they head back to the city, but the guy refuses right away and says, just the two of them are already enough for the mission. The sorceress doesn't understand and asks about the other members she mentioned earlier. The young man says he could even do it all alone, and the girl wonders where the confidence comes from. The adventurer also warns that he won't build a giant drone for the trip. He explains that the bigger the object, the worse the magic fuel efficiency. With a serious look, the adventurer asks what the plan is to get to the dungeon. The guy replies that they will use a new power source different from the stones, and to surprise her even more, he reveals he won't build a giant drone. The young man reinforces that a large vehicle would fall before reaching its final destination. With a serious look, the adventurer asks what the plan is to reach the dungeon. The guy replies that they will use a new power source different from the stones. The girl is surprised and asks what this new power source would be. With a confident look, the young man turns to his teammate, and with a smile on his face, he reveals that she will be the power source. He explains that as a sorceress, she uses magic, and they will use that as power. Without wasting time, the young man uses his skill and tells her to just watch. With that, a hot air balloon appears, and the guy says they are going to fly in it. The adventurer then tells the girl to get in so they can test the creation. The sorceress asks what she should do, and he tells her to fill the balloon with wind. Without questioning, the girl uses her wind magic to inflate the large balloon. With her magic, the huge object starts filling with air quickly. After inflating the balloon, the young man says they now need to heat the air. He explains that anything that generates heat works, but flame hand is better. The girl then activates her skill, and a flame appears in her right hand. With a focused look, she raises her hand to heat the air inside the balloon. Suddenly, the balloon's basket starts lifting off the ground, and the girl gets startled. The guy explains that it is the difference in density that is making them float. He warns her not to let the fire go out, and she complains about not being told. The young man says it is no problem, because he will handle the dungeon enemies. The sorceress doubts it a little since he is only at level 24, but as the balloon rises, she thinks she has high expectations for him. With a determined look, she believes that with him, they might just make it. She then thinks that with Alan, they can actually clear the dungeon. After the long trip, the two finally arrive at the castle entrance. The adventurer praises the work, and the girl says it was nothing much. Inside, he notices there are many other groups of adventurers. The sorceress explains that if another group clears it, they will have to start over. The young man says to hurry up, because he won't let anyone take the orb. He says to leave the weak monsters to the others and focus on the goal. The sorceress starts explaining that the dungeon has 3 floors to clear. The guy interrupts her and says they need 3 crystals to go to the next one. With a smile, he says he'd love to tell her how he knows, but it won't be for free. The girl gets annoyed at her teammate's audacity. At that moment, suddenly, the two stop running and look at something in front of them. They see that another group of adventurers has already reached the first boss. The creature is a powerful Abyss Minotaur at level 45. The girl suggests they skip that floor, since there are 7 in total, but the young man refuses, because he doesn't want to give up that floor's crystal. He then approaches and tells the other group to get out of the way, with his arms crossed. He tells them to move if they don't plan on fighting. One of the adventurers gets furious at the protagonist's attitude there, but seeing level 24, he starts laughing and mocking the guy. With a smile, the group makes way and says the boss is all his. The young man thanks them and gets ready to fight the monster alone. He stands in front of the giant creature, without showing an ounce of fear. The sorceress yells and warns that her mana hasn't fully recovered yet. The guy says it is no problem, and takes out a sandworm magic stone. With that, he uses his creation skill once again in the battle. A rocket launcher appears with a power of 14,500. The girl calculates that with the bonus, the attack power goes over 30,000. The Minotaur raises its axe, and the young man aims right at the creature's head. With a cold look, the adventurer says the battle is already over for the monster. Without wasting time, he fires the powerful missile at the giant beast. The rocket flies at high speed and hits the Minotaur right in the face. A huge explosion takes over the entire room and blinds everyone there. The sorceress shields herself with her arms from the attack's strong shock wave. The other adventurers are thrown backward by the force of the explosion. A system screen then announces that the boss was successfully defeated. The guy levels up to 25, and the others are shocked by the power. The girl is left speechless and praises the guy for the crushing victory. With a surprised look, she asks what exactly he did to win. The young man thinks he might not even have needed the magic stone to win. After the victory, he receives the first crystal, and 2 are left for the next floor. He then takes the Minotaur's stone, and the girl says she doesn't mind. Without wasting time, the 2 run to the dungeon's next challenge. The sorceress wonders how such a bad class defeated a strong boss. In the next room, they find a hallway with an abyss in the middle. The guy says that to get the other crystals, they need to cross there. The adventurer says the path is cut off and wonders how they will cross. But the young man says that is not quite right and that the path isn't cut off. He reveals that the floor is actually transparent and that there is a bridge. The girl is a little scared, but doesn't show it to her partner. One of the other adventurers tries his luck and gets ready to take the first step, but he steps in the wrong spot, and the sound of the trap echoes through the room. The adventurer then falls into the deep, dark abyss with no chance at all. The protagonist says this is what happens to whoever steps in the wrong place. He thinks the common strategy would be to use a staff to find the path, but if he does that, the other adventurers will just copy his steps. The sorceress then suggests he use his skill to build a bridge. The young man replies that if it were possible, everyone would have used magic to fly. He then tells the girl to try using some magic to test a theory. The sorceress realizes she can't, and the guy says her skills are restricted. With a confident smile, the protagonist reveals there is another way. The girl doesn't understand and just stares at the guy with a very curious look. They then return to the abyss hallway to solve the problem. With only 2 crystals left, they get ready for the final challenge. The guy explains that even with restricted creation, his inventory works. Night vision goggles appear, and he says he came prepared for the mission. He hands the gear to the sorceress, and she asks what it is for. He explains that with the goggles made from the bat stone, he can see the invisible. The girl is shocked by the guy's intelligence and asks when he made it. The young man reveals he crafted the item while she was distracted in the hot air balloon. The sorceress is even more impressed since she doesn't know the traps. With the goggles, he explains that it detects infrared light and sees the invisible through the equipment. The protagonist can see the path clearly. He says they can proceed now, and the girl praises his preparation. Suddenly, the adventurer picks the girl up in his arms and she gets quite startled. He just replies that he is saving time to clear the dungeon. With a desperate scream, the sorceress clings to him as he runs. The guy warns her not to talk, or she will end up biting her own tongue. With the girl in his arms, he runs at high speed across the invisible path. The other adventurers are shocked to see the young man running on thin air. His partner screams and begs him to slow down and be careful. In a few seconds, they reach the end, and she tells him to hold on a second. At the end of the hallway, the path splits, and she asks which one is the right one. The guy says both are right, and that both have a crystal at the end. The young man asks if she is mad about something, and the girl tells him to shut up. He says he would love to split up, but is worried about her safety. With that, they decide to stick together, and she accepts, even if reluctantly. The adventurer thinks he needs her safe to get the information about the attack. In the next challenge, they find a hallway full of sharp blades. The sorceress says the place is dangerous and wonders what they should do. The guy creates a weapon and says the solution is very simple and straightforward. He starts shooting and destroying all the blades that are in the way. The girl realizes she can use magic, and the guy says skills work too. With a smile, she says this will be easy and creates a magic barrier. The two run down the hallway while destroying all the traps. In the final room, they find a giant wall with a crystal at the top. The sorceress asks if there are any traps, and he tells her to touch the wall. The girl touches it and complains that the wall is too slippery to climb. She suggests he use his skill, and the guy says she finally gets it. With a smile, he brags about the versatility his class has in the game. The sorceress tells him to hurry up and asks if he is going to use the balloon again. The young man replies, no, because a balloon would be overkill for a place like that. He then uses his creation skill. Once again in the middle of the dungeon, an elevator appears, and the girl is left not understanding what that weird thing is. The guy explains it is an elevator and presses the button so they can go up. With just a touch, the equipment starts working perfectly. The adventurer says the elevator moves people and goods up and down. In the blink of an eye, the two reach the top of the wall and grab the crystal. With the second crystal in hand, only one more is left for the next floor. The guy says to head to the next one, and the girl tells him to wait a bit. In the final room, they find a huge swamp of dangerous poison. The young man warns that the poison is strong and can cause status effects. The sorceress asks what creation he will use to solve that problem. The guy just smiles and doesn't answer his teammate's question. He then uses his skill and gets ready to craft another useful item. A boat appears, and the girl is impressed because she wasn't expecting something like that. She thinks it is very normal, and the guy asks if she said something out loud. The girl brushes it off and thinks she was expecting something more mysterious. The protagonist says there is no need to overdo it and tells her to get in the boat. Inside, the sorceress asks about the oars so they can move. With a mischievous smile, he says that is where teamwork comes in. The girl doesn't understand what he meant and stares at him with a confused look. She then realizes her magic will be used as propulsion for the boat. With an annoyed look, she complains because that puts a lot of pressure on her. While she rows, the guy just relaxes and rests with his hands behind his head. After crossing the swamp, the two finally reach the last crystal. With the 3 crystals in hand, they finally complete the first floor. The girl says she thought it was impossible, but it was easy, and he replies that it is only natural. He then brags and says his craftsman class is the strongest of all. With that, he turns his back and says to head to the next challenge, but the sorceress thinks the craftsman class is not the most powerful of all. She then realizes that the truly strong one is actually the guy himself. Even though they haven't known each other long, she says she can confirm one thing. She is sure the young man will become a historic adventurer. Minutes later, the two arrive at the lower floor's transfer room. The guy says that by placing the crystals on the pedestal, they will go to the next floor. The girl comments that he never gets lost and seems to know everything about the castle. The young adventurer just replies that he bet his whole life on it. With that, he places the 3 crystals on the pedestal, and they glow brightly. The system authenticates the crystals, and they are teleported to the middle floor. The two then arrive at the middle floor entrance, which looks quite different. The guy says the middle floors are a different instance dungeon. He then compares the situation to a matryoshka doll, and she doesn't understand. The young man promises he will make one for her after they conquer the castle. With that, the two get ready to enter the portal and start the new challenge. But suddenly, the sorceress stops him and tells him to wait a moment. The guy turns around and stares at his teammate without understanding why. With a serious look, she challenges him to a battle before they go in. The sorceress proposes a small bet before they continue their exploration. The young man is a bit intrigued by the idea and asks what it is all about. With a very confident smile, the girl confirms that she wants to make a challenge. She explains that the middle floors are divided into two different parts. Soon, the young woman warns that in the first area, they will face a giant horde of weak monsters. Lighting a flame in her hand, she suggests a competition to see who eliminates more enemies. The protagonist crosses his arms, complaining that the rules heavily favor her side. After all, his partner's class is completely focused on large magical area attacks. Meanwhile, the young shooter's weapons are made to focus on only one target at a time, but the girl just teases her teammate, asking if he is afraid of losing the bet. Placing her hands on her hips, she claims that she will show the true value of her power. With an intense look, the sorceress thinks she will make the shooter acknowledge her strength. At that, the adventurer accepts the challenge, thinking it will speed up the floor anyway. Standing in front of the blue portal, they agree that the loser will pay for an expensive potion. As soon as they step through the door, the duo comes across a bizarre crowd of creatures in the arena. Several half-pig monsters and goblins stare at the invaders with glowing red eyes. With a serious face, the blue-haired girl prepares to start her devastating attack. On the other side, the young man also focuses his gaze, ready to begin the unstoppable clearing. A system screen warns that the first test requires defeating 1,500 angry beasts. At that moment, the girl already starts casting a wind magic spell, turning the creatures into dust. Using all her power, the girl activates the dark nebula magic, creating a massive dark vortex in the air. With a great blast, several monsters are thrown far away, while she brags about her incredible clearing strength. When his turn comes, the shooter stretches out his hand, generating a strong blue electric energy to prepare his attack. At that moment, the young man materializes a huge rotary machine gun, showing that the creator's turn has begun. Focusing entirely on the targets, the protagonist adopts a serious posture and warns the creatures to brace for the attack. Without holding back, he pulls the trigger, making the giant weapon fiercely fire flames and bullets. A shower of shots hits the monsters in the arena, causing massive damage and taking down several at the same time. The absurd firepower pierces through the enemies without the slightest difficulty, eliminating them from the area quickly. Watching the massive takedown, the partner is in shock, realizing that the damage and shooting speed border on the absurd. Holding the heavy weapon, the shooter explains that mobility is bad, but the elimination capacity is perfect. But the girl refuses to give up, getting furious about almost losing an area, clearing to a different class. Gathering even more energy, the young woman floats in the air, surrounded by a strong magical aura, ready to fight back. A few minutes later, the scoreboard reveals that the shooter got 800 takedowns, securing the victory over his partner. Completely exhausted, the sorceress remains on the floor while her teammate walks by and says she focused on the wrong opponent. Keeping a calm look, the protagonist tries to cheer up his teammate, commenting that the match was actually pretty close. However, the young woman remains silently outraged for having lost exactly in her biggest combat specialty. Looking up at the winner, the young woman finally realizes that this boy is a true outlier. Advancing through the dungeon, the duo reaches the second floor, where the mage warns that the next fight will be against the boss. Focused on the final goal, the adventurer evaluates that they are very close to getting the powerful dragon orb. Blushing slightly, the girl confesses that exploring that dangerous place seems way too easy with his help. With a focused look, the shooter already prepares himself mentally for the big battle ahead. Standing back to back, the duo faces a strong blue light, while the girl warns that the enemies have arrived. Suddenly, a huge paw with sharp claws hits the ground hard, kicking up a lot of dust. The floor boss appears, being a purple ogre riding a beast that looks like a large lion. A panel reveals that the top creature is a level 50 crystal ogre with a scary aura. Meanwhile, the boss's mount is a level 50 crystal manicore, also with red eyes. The sorceress is shocked by the duo, and the young man notices they use coordinated attacks. She then says they need to separate them, but her partner disagrees and activates his creation skill. With a confident smile, the shooter creates a rocket launcher and says he will blast both of them. The girl recognizes the weapon that defeated the previous boss in one hit, and her eyes sparkle. But upon seeing the stats, the young woman notices that the attack power is 16,000, being weaker. The young man explains that it is a normal version because a direct hit still guarantees victory. A diagram shows that creations with magic stones are strong but break after use, giving them no time to chat. The monster duo glares at the adventurers with malicious eyes. With that, the creatures jump toward the two with incredible speed, preparing to strike. The protagonist then quickly orders his partner to freeze the entire arena floor. Although surprised by the request, the mage obeys and places her hands on the ground to use her magic. A huge path of ice forms and advances at high speed toward the two bosses. The young man thinks that the manticore is very agile, and a frontal attack would easily be dodged. So, his plan is to force the creature into a situation where it can no longer dodge the attack. However, the beast jumps over the ice path before touching the frozen surface. With an impressive leap, the monster duo flies high into the air, surprising both of them. But the shooter just gives a sly smile and says the move was perfect for his plan. He thinks that without wings, the enemy cannot use its agility in the air, leaving it vulnerable. Aiming with precision, the protagonist fires the missile and sends the creatures away. Struck by surprise, the ogre widens its eyes upon seeing the projectile approaching in the air. In a desperate move, the purple monster gets ready to do something unexpected to escape. It uses its mount as a trampoline and jumps away, leaving the beast behind. The adventuring duo is shocked to see the intelligence of the boss, who sacrificed its ally. A gigantic blast happens in the air when the rocket finally hits the manicore. The protagonist is shocked because that move shouldn't be possible in the game. Taking advantage of the jump, the ogre prepares for a crushing attack from above. The young man stares at the falling creature and realizes the approaching danger. Suddenly, the monster comes down hard toward the adventurer on the ground. The sorceress panics and desperately yells for him to get away from the strike. But the young man stays completely still without showing any reaction of fear or dread. She thinks his level is low and that without armor, the blow will be devastating. With that, the young woman runs to try and take the attack in her partner's place. The ogre comes down with its club glowing red, ready to crush the young man. However, she realizes she won't be able to get there in time to save him from the hit. The creature approaches quickly, and it seems like it is the end of the line for the shooter. Desperate, the mage reaches out her hand, trying to reach her teammate. The strike is inches away from hitting the young man, who remains motionless in the arena. The young man thinks the tactic of using the mount was unexpected, but he already anticipated it. A yellow light shines in the weapon's barrel, indicating that something is going to happen. With a smile, the young man reveals that this scenario went exactly as he calculated. With his weapon reloaded, he fires a second missile right at the ogre's face. His partner shields herself from the strong shockwave caused by the second blast. After the smoke clears, the protagonist sighs in relief at the outcome of the fight. A system screen appears, and the adventurer levels up to 26. The young woman is confused because she thought he was out of ammo for the attack. The young man explains that unlike fusion weapons, this one reloads itself. He admits it was a close call and that he would have been defeated if the reload didn't finish. But the young man reveals he had already factored the second shot into his initial plan. With the victory secured, he picks up the purple crystal the monster dropped. After the fight, he says they now only need the powerful crystal dragon to clear the dungeon. The sorceress thinks she has seen many adventurers who only use brute force, but she has never seen anyone with the confidence and calm that her partner shows. She then understands why. They are trying to get rid of the shooter. Finally, the two arrive at the grand entrance door to the upper floors. The sorceress prepares for the final battle and tries to push the massive entrance door. But her partner warns that the door is just for show, and the young woman looks confused. He explains that this floor uses a teleportation portal, but there isn't one there right now. With a serious look, the young man reveals that this means someone is already inside. The girl gets a worried expression and starts to understand the complicated situation. At that, she asks if another group is challenging the boss, and the young man nods, confirming it. His partner gets nervous and says that if they win, it will all have been for nothing for them. The shooter sits on the floor and says that panicking won't help, suggesting they come up with a strategy. He then reveals that the Crystal Dragon, an epic class boss, uses a devastating attack. The sorceress is completely shocked and cannot believe the enemy is an epic class. A diagram shows that the epic class is superior and has unique stats and skills. The young man says the dragon has a massive strike and a damage cap to protect itself. He explains that the damage cap negates any attack that goes over a certain value. The young woman understands that her partner's firepower will be useless, and he agrees with her. Because of that, he wants to create a battle plan, and the mage asks what her role will be. The adventurer explains that in the boss room, hordes of weak monsters will appear. He then asks his partner to take care of the smaller enemies while he focuses on the boss. She agrees but asks about the devastating attack, and he tells her to hide when he gives the signal. Suddenly, the blue portal appears, and the young man says the other group's battle is over. With a serious look, he concludes they were wiped out since escaping the room is impossible. The girl gets nervous thinking that even experienced adventurers couldn't win, but the protagonist reassures her and says that if they follow the plan, victory will be theirs. With a determined look, the sorceress says she is trusting him entirely for this. The young man replies with the same determination and tells her to leave everything to him. As they walk, he thinks he cannot fall until he is the first to reach level 99. The two then step through the portal and arrive at the floor boss's massive arena. The duo observes the architecture of the place and realizes they have reached the upper floors, but the floor of the room is covered with the fallen members of the adventurer group that failed. The sorceress is shocked by the amount of fallen adventurers scattered all over the place. However, the young man says there is no time to be afraid and faces the challenge head-on. From the arena floor, a massive blue crystal creature begins to emerge slowly. With a watchful eye, the duo prepares as the great boss has finally appeared. Then, the enormous winged creature made of blue crystals floats imposingly in the arena. With a powerful roar, the system confirms that it is the level 50 crystal dragon. The sorceress is terrified by the overwhelming pressure of the epic class enemy, but the young man calms her down and tells her not to get swept away by the monster's intense pressure. He then warns that the creature isn't the only enemy, as other beasts have appeared behind it. The duo faces the great crystal dragon, flying imposingly in the dungeon sky. The young man creates the machine gun and tells his partner to handle the monsters while he deals with the boss. Wasting no time, he begins firing a barrage of shots at the dragon. The giant creature roars in pain and fury as it gets hit by the weapon's projectiles. The young man thinks the machine gun is perfect against the enemy's damage cap. The sorceress is impressed to see her partner pressuring an epic boss. He thinks that even though it is a tough opponent, there's nothing to fear if they know the tricks. With a determined look, the young woman tells him to press their advantage, but something happens. While he shoots, the mage uses her powers to fight off the other monsters. Suddenly, the machine gun stops firing, and he realizes he ran out of ammo. Seeing the opening, the crystal creature raises its head and gets ready to attack. With his eyes wide open, the shooter recognizes the enemy's move. He then yells and tells his partner to fall back because the ultimate attack is coming right now. The creature opens its mouth and begins charging a dark and deadly energy sphere. Without hesitation, the monster fires a powerful blast of dark, devastating flames. The young man drops to one knee and activates his creation skill to defend against the strike. With a touch on the ground, a giant metal wall begins to rise in front of them. Behind the cover, the sorceress is shocked to see a shield sprouting out of nowhere. The young man explains it is a fire-resistant shield, and the attack won't work without direct contact. He says that as soon as the machine gun reloads, they will counterattack with everything they have. But his partner yells and warns that the shield is cracking under the attack's force. The young woman gets desperate because this wasn't part of the original plan they came up with. The young man thinks the shield's durability wasn't enough to withstand the power. The dragon continues to fire its powerful dark flame breath non-stop. The metal shield cannot hold up and starts breaking apart under the pressure of the strike. The young man thinks he needs another method, since there's no guarantee a new shield will hold. With a deafening noise, the metal wall finally shatters into 1,000 pieces. The sorceress screams her partner's name, desperate about the extremely dangerous situation. But the young man grits his teeth and thinks he cannot afford to be defeated right there. With that, he activates his creation skill. Once more in the middle of the grand battle, a red fire extinguisher appears in his hands, surprising his partner. The girl is completely confused and asks what that weird thing is. The young man calmly explains that it is just a simple fire extinguisher. He thinks it was the first thing that came to his mind to put out the fire. To maximize its power, he fused the item with a crystal ogre magic stone. Running toward the attack, he wonders if his crazy idea will actually work. With sparkling eyes, he decides to bet everything on his creation skill. Then, he aims the object and shoots a huge cloud of white foam at the flames. The extinguisher's foam flies at high speed to collide with the dragon's attack. His partner is shocked to see that the foam is clashing head-on with the breath attack. The crystal creature continues firing its powerful blast of dark flames. The two attacks clash with absurd force, creating a massive shockwave. The young man yells from the effort, while continuing to spray the extinguisher foam. The white foam begins to push back and neutralize the enemy's dark flames. With that, the ultimate attack is completely neutralized, leaving the dragon surprised. The sorceress is left speechless and wonders what the secret behind that extinguisher is. The young man explains that, as the name implies, it is just a tool to put out fires. With the crisis averted and his weapon reloaded, he says it is time to strike back. Without wasting a single second, he starts firing the machine gun again. The creature is hit by several shots, and its health bar begins to drop. The girl celebrates with a smile, seeing that the plan is working perfectly. The dragon roars in pain and backs away, while the duo carefully watches the scene. He then tells her to ignore the weak monsters, so they can finish off the boss together. The sorceress agrees with a determined look, and accepts her partner's plan. With that, she activates her magic and creates circles of red energy to help with the attack. On the other side, the protagonist keeps firing the machine gun at full force. The duo's combined attack causes massive damage, and the dragon's health plummets. Then, the creature's crystal body starts breaking apart, and its health gets very low. With one final powerful strike, the boss shatters, and the system announces the grand victory. After their victory, they both level up, and the young woman complains that he held back a bit. The young man says it doesn't matter, because the important thing is that they won the battle. He then kneels to pick up the valuable magic stone from the great defeated dragon. His partner then asks about the Jade Dragon Orb, the mission's objective. The adventurer points to a large treasure chest that appeared in the middle of the room. He explains that the chest appears after defeating the boss, and she opens it to see the item. Inside, the legendary Jade Dragon Orb glows with a bright red light. The sorceress grabs the epic item and celebrates that they managed to clear the dungeon. But suddenly, the young man interrupts her with a cold and dark look on his face. At that moment, he points a weapon at her head, and the girl gets very confused. The young man explains that by taking the orb, the mission ends, and they will be teleported. With a tense expression, the sorceress stares at her partner, waiting to see what he will do. He then asks if she forgot the terms of the agreement they made earlier. The shooter demands she reveal who sent the attackers to try and eliminate him. The young woman agrees to tell him everything and asks him to put that dangerous weapon away. He then lowers the weapon, and the girl sighs in relief at the less tense situation. She then prepares to reveal the identity of the person who wants him gone in the story. The two stare at each other in the empty room, waiting for the big revelation about the mastermind. But to his surprise, she reveals that she doesn't know exactly who gave the order. The protagonist is shocked and very angry at his partner's unexpected answer. Angry, he points the weapon again, and the mage asks him to calm down a bit. She explains she has an idea of which organization it is and possesses solid information, but the young man thinks about the proposal for a bit and lets out a more relieved sigh now. He agrees to listen and says he will let it slide if the information is useful to him. The shooter then asks which organization ordered his elimination, and she asks if it is a clan. The young woman replies with a serious look and says it is something much bigger than he imagines. With a dark expression, she reveals that it is the Adventurers Guild that wants to get rid of him. The young man is completely shocked and speechless at his partner's bombshell revelation. He questions the reason, since the guild's goal is to defeat the Demon King, and he cooperates. The girl explains that it wouldn't be a problem if he were just an ordinary adventurer, but the big problem is that the protagonist is simply too strong for them. At that, he remembers the words the attacker said to him before their fight. The attacker had said he was too strong, and that the powerful ones didn't like that. She says he is strong and, at this rate, might defeat the Demon King, which some people don't want. The young man asks why not, and she says the answer is actually very simple. The young woman explains that if the Demon King falls, the world will be at peace, and the guild will be disbanded. He concludes that they eliminate talents to protect their positions, and she confirms the theory. His partner reveals it is just a group known as the Demon King's Remnant faction. The shooter then asks who the faction's leader is and thinks about defeating him to solve this. However, the young woman reveals that the big problem is that no one knows who the group members are. She explains they don't help the enemy, which is why they don't commit open sabotage. His partner says the faction isn't limited to executives and includes many other types of people. Tavern owners and anyone who would be threatened by the villain's defeat could be a member. The protagonist scratches his head and thinks that if he thinks too much about it, there will be no end to it. The sorceress says that judging by the methods used this time, the culprit must be someone from the guild. He says he won't forgive anyone who gets in the way of his progress and asks about the other targets. The young man corrects himself and says he wants to know about other promising rookies who are also being hunted. Awkwardly, the girl reveals that she herself is one of those targets, and the young man feels embarrassed. The young woman coughs a little to cover up the awkward moment she just created. Regaining her composure, she gets ready to talk about the countermeasures against the pursuers. With a serious look, the young man faces his partner, ready to hear the rest of the information. But suddenly, a light teleports everyone outside, and the other adventurers are confused. One of the men is shocked and wonders if anyone managed to defeat the crystal dragon. At that, a glowing blue message starts to form in the sky in front of everyone. The system announces that Alan and Melissa defeated the boss, and everyone is very surprised. Then, the duo is teleported to the ground, and the young man says it is time to head back to the city. The young woman asks how they are going to get down and reminds him he cannot use teleportation. Calmly, he answers that it is no problem, and he will just create a parachute. She is confused by the object, but suddenly the other adventurers spot the duo. One of them points at the sorceress and deduces that the man next to her is the guy named Alan. The crowd approaches and congratulates the young woman on the feat of clearing the floor with just 2 people. The young man comments that she is a celebrity, and his partner brags that she is a rising star. The crowd gets excited and asks the girl to tell them how she managed to conquer the castle. With a smile, she tries to calm everyone down and says she isn't the amazing person there. Then, the young woman points to her partner and reveals his level 27, shocking everyone. No one believes it because he is a low level and has a class they think is useless. The protagonist looks at everyone's levels around him and realizes they are much stronger. With all the attention on them, he thinks this is the chance to promote his weapons. The sorceress says they only won because of him and that the power of his creations is insane. She asks him to show them. but the young man praises his partner in his mind and turns down the idea. He interrupts her and says he is just a level 27 creator and didn't do anything special. The young man tells everyone that his partner defeated the crystal dragon all by herself. With that, he says he only tagged along because of the mechanics and would be defeated without her. The sorceress calls his name somewhat awkwardly and with a smile on her face upon understanding. The young man looks away and his partner doesn't understand his sudden attitude. He thinks that drawing attention will make it harder to level up and decides not to sell anything. With a glance, the young woman understands the strategy and realizes what he is trying to do. She thinks he is giving her all the credit, so he won't be noticed by his enemies. The crowd believes the story and starts praising the sorceress's beauty and humility. The girl's face turns completely red, and she desperately asks them to stop it. While the young woman deals with the fame, the crystal island floats in the sky far from the city. The scene then cuts and shows their kingdom's large and bustling royal capital. Back in the city, his partner asks what he will do, and the young man says he will go to the inn. With a serious look, the young man explains he will use his magic stones to create items. The sorceress says they will part ways and jokes that it must be hard for him. The young man says goodbye dryly, and the young woman asks if there is nothing else to say. With her eyes closed, she thinks and says she finally understood what is bothering her. She says she got the item, but only gave him vague information in return. Striking a confident pose, his partner says she hates that because it feels unfair to her. With that, the young woman promises to investigate the enemy faction as much as she can for him. The shooter agrees and says more information is always welcome for his plan. The young woman invites him to hunt together and says next time she will carry him. The protagonist just gives a small smile at his partner's confident proposal. She says goodbye and tells him to be careful, and the young man wishes her the same. As he walks away, the sorceress thinks she cannot believe she was carried by someone. The girl is still shocked, remembering that he is a level 27 creator. She creates a fireball and wonders if she can become as strong as him if she masters her class. But suddenly, the young woman's expression changes, and she feels something strange in the air around her. Walking down the street, the sorceress feels a strong hostile intent coming from somewhere. From a window, a masked attacker appears holding a bow and arrow. The girl's eyes go wide when she notices the imminent threat in the area. Without hesitating, the enemy aims his arrow right at the unsuspecting protagonist. His partner screams his name as the arrow flies at high speed in his direction. The projectile gets very close to the young man's neck, who hadn't noticed the fatal attack. But at the last second, a green barrier pops up out of nowhere and successfully blocks the arrow. The attacker is completely shocked to see his surprise attack fail. The sorceress looks at the roof and realizes the enemies have already fled the scene. She runs to her partner and asks if he is okay after that massive scare. The young man answers that he didn't expect an attack inside the capital walls. He then complains that his enemies are getting desperate and he cannot even walk alone anymore. The young woman says that is why she would teach him how to deal with rogues, and he agrees to try. She then offers to protect him in exchange for a fee, of course, but the protagonist declines the offer and says he will handle everything himself because it sounds expensive. The sorceress is disappointed, but warns him not to do anything reckless and to rely on her. With a smile, the young woman says they are now members of the same party. The young man repeats her words and seems to think about the idea a bit. She then asks if he has a problem with that, and the young man shakes his head. With a serious look, she warns she won't forgive him if he falls to an attacker. With a confident smile, he says he won't fall until he reaches level 999. The sorceress gives a small smile at her partner's confident response. She then waves and says goodbye to the protagonist, who turns to leave. The shooter looks back with a thoughtful expression on his face. He then remembers when he focused only on leveling up alone in a game. The young man used to think it was easier to play solo, but a memory pops up. With that, he starts thinking that having companions might not be so bad. Back in the present, he sighs and thinks this feeling isn't like him. For now, he decides he needs to prioritize the issue with the attackers. The next morning, the The protagonist walks through the city streets very early. The young man thinks he never imagined having anything to do with this place, but he was forced. With a determined look, he arrives in front of the Grand Clan Association. The young man stares at the large building with a serious expression on his face. The day before, he asked his partner how to deal with attackers. The young woman then revealed that the fastest way to stay safe is to join a clan. The shooter gets a bit confused and questions the sorceress's suggestion. She starts to explain, but the young man interrupts her and says he already knows the basics. The young man then asks how that would help him deal with the attackers. His partner explains it is like animals in a pack, as there is safety in numbers. That is why she recommends a large, high-ranking clan with powerful ties. The protagonist thinks about her phrase regarding people with a lot of power and influence. He remembers the guild executives and wonders if they have a preferred clan. The sorceress explains that a clan offers safety and information at the same time. Back in the present, the young man is in front of the Grand Clan Association. He thinks he came all this way, but wonders how to join the kind of clan he is looking for. At that, a few people recognize him and comment that he doesn't have a clan yet. One of the men asks if the other knows the young man, and he says he is pretty famous among them. Then they reveal he is the guy who easily broke the wolf mine record. Another man remembers he cleared the Crystal Castle with Melissa the day before. Watching from a distance, a person in a blue cloak seems to understand the whole situation. With a confident look, he notices there are reception desks for each type of clan. It is explained that a clan's type shows its objective, like Conquest, which focuses on dungeons. There are also social defense, gathering, and subjugation types, besides the general type. Looking at the crowd, he notes that general, conquest, and subjugation clans are the most popular. But the young man thinks that what is popular doesn't matter to him, and he keeps going on his way. Suddenly, a blond man approaches and asks if he is looking for a clan. The young man turns around and, with a suspicious look, asks who the stranger in front of him is. The blonde introduces himself as Max, the leader of the rank B conquest clan called the Gazelles. The man says he heard he is an incredible creator and invites him to his group. The protagonist just listens to the man's proposal with a serious expression on his face. At that, another guy arrives and tells him not to join a conquest clan, but rather a general one. The newcomer invites him to his rank B general clan called the Tigers, saying they will welcome him warmly. Max gets angry at the interruption, and the shooter suggests they should use numbered tickets. The leaders start arguing, and the crowd realizes they are fighting over Alan. Someone comments on his low level, but concludes he must have a huge secret. With all the commotion, more people decide it is worth trying to recruit him too. A woman from a rank clan steps up and offers an attractive experience if he joins. With all the confusion, the protagonist asks everyone to calm down for a second. The young man then turns around and says he appreciates all the invitations he received, but there's a catch. He reveals he is only interested in defense clans that are rank A or higher. The crowd is completely shocked upon hearing the young man's specific demand. With a small smile, he confirms that this is exactly what he is looking for. It is explained that defense clans have ties to the government and are good for gathering information. Furthermore, with the excuse of defense, he could distribute his weapons across several cities. Lastly, a rank clan would be the perfect backing for all his future plans. With a cold look, he tells them to leave if they don't meet the requirements he set. The leaders are annoyed by the young man's arrogance and click their tongues in disapproval. With his demand, the crowd that was surrounding him starts leaving quickly. The young man thinks they are leaving faster than he had imagined, but an armored man approaches and says he can meet the conditions. The shooter then looks at the stranger and, with a suspicious look, asks who he is. The man introduces himself as Flynn and reveals his level is 378. With a smile, he says he is the master of the rank A defense clan called Sacred Guardian. The protagonist is shocked because it is very rare to see such a high level on the second floor. Flynn asks if he is sure, as their clan is strict and gives no special treatment. The young man remembers Melissa suggesting a trial period to promote himself. With that in mind, He says he would like to join if it's on a trial basis. The leader agrees, since compatibility is important, and then sends the official invite. At that, an invitation screen to the Sacred Guardian clan appears in front of the young man. Without hesitating, the young man presses the accept button and officially joins his new clan. The system confirms his entry, and Flynn shakes his hand, welcoming him to the team. The leader then says he will show him the headquarters, and they can sort out the details there. The scene then cuts and shows the Sacred Guardian clan's large and luxurious headquarters. Inside an office, the leader sits down and prepares to explain all the rules. The man then asks if the rookie knows what a defense-type clan actually does. He answers that they go to cities and villages to intercept the enemy army. Flynn confirms and explains they operate in groups of 3 with similar levels. The young man gets annoyed and asks the leader if he cannot go on missions alone. With a smile, the man replies that unfortunately, that won't be possible in the clan. He thinks that being stuck in a group will just get in the way of his leveling plan. Flynn says he will patrol the city and will only join missions when he gets stronger. The young man thinks he won't level up like that and still runs the risk of being targeted by enemies. The leader finishes the explanation and asks if the young man has any questions, but he stays quiet. He thinks he cannot work like this, but quitting won't solve the enemy problem. The man notices the rookie's silence and asks if something is wrong with him. Sighing, the protagonist thinks he has no choice but to negotiate the terms. The young man says he has no questions, but would like to make a request to the leader. He says he isn't interested in patrols and asks to go straight to defense missions. The master apologizes, but with a serious look, says he needs to follow the clan's rules. With a smile, the young man says he knows, and that is why he wants an exception if he proves his strength. The leader seems interested in the proposal, and then asks how he would prove it. The shooter says it is simple and challenges him to a duel for the exception he wants. The man gives a small smile and seems to find the bold proposal quite interesting. The young man repeats the proposal and says if he wins, Flynn will have to grant his request. Flynn keeps his amused look and seems to ponder the rookie's proposal. Calmly, the master says he admires the young man's enthusiasm, but there's a catch. He then turns around and, with a smile on his face, says he unfortunately cannot accept. The protagonist is surprised by the refusal and asks why he cannot accept. The leader explains there is nothing for him to gain from this fight, so it isn't worth it. The man suggests he participate in activities for a week and then talk to him again. Annoyed, the young man agrees but warns that since it is a test, he will leave if he doesn't like it. He then realizes that continuing to argue won't lead anywhere right now. Suddenly, the leader changes the subject and says they have finally arrived at the headquarters. The man then explains with a smile that these are the young man's new team members. At that, the door opens, and a voice asks the master if that is the 3rd member. The protagonist turns around with a suspicious look to see who his new teammates are. The master introduces Noki and Hina, revealing that they are both Lancer classes. With a smile, Noki introduces himself and, showing his level 55, greets him. Hina also greets him with a smile and reveals her level 40 on the screen. With an annoyed expression, the shooter thinks he will have to form a party with them. He questions the level difference, and Flynn says they are the weakest in the clan. Noki stares at him and asks if he will be okay, since he looks very weak and low level. His partner scolds him and asks him to stop, saying that is a rude way to speak. The master says his level might be low, but he is quite famous in the city. Noki assumes he is skilled, and the young man reveals he is only level 27. The Lancer is shocked to see he is a creator, and even says the class is terrible. The girl is shocked and recognizes the name Alan the Creator, which leaves her surprised. Noki then asks how she knows the young man, and he wonders which Alan she is talking about. She reveals he cleared the Crystal Castle with Melissa, and her teammate is shocked. With a smile, the leader comments that hearing about the young man's achievement is quite impressive. The young man then asks if the master didn't know, and he laughs, saying my bad. Flynn explains he saw the crowd at the association and only went to check it out of pure curiosity. Even so, he let him in because he figured someone drawing so much attention was talented. The Lancer girl gets all excited and asks the master if they can really party up with him. But her teammate says he was just carried by Melissa, who could have done it all herself. The protagonist asks if they know the sorceress, and the young man confirms she is famous. At that, he remembers the young woman calling herself a rising star, and that she was telling the truth. The leader then suggests the trio go out hunting so they can get to know each other's skills. With that, the Lancer duo agrees with the idea and seems quite excited for the hunt. Naki then teases the rookie, saying it is his chance to admit he is actually pretty weak. The shooter thinks the guy is annoying and decides to just praise him a bit to avoid a fight. So he says Melissa did everything by herself in the castle, and he was just a leech. The Lancer gets all smug and yells that he knew that was exactly what happened. With a smile, he tells the rookie to leave everything to his senior, and the young man agrees. The trio then says goodbye to the master and sets off on their first mission together in the forest. The leader thinks the rookie is a terrible liar and wouldn't get there at level 27. He doesn't know the method, but an adventurer who does the impossible isn't a leech. Then, the group arrives at the Trent forest with a recommended level of 35. The young man says he doesn't know the place and that he avoided the forest in the game because the gains were bad. His teammate explains there are monsters called Trents there, which look like trees. The young man then asks if they cannot use detection skills to find them. Naoki says not to underestimate them and tells him the Trents are no threat to them. Suddenly, the shooter senses a strange presence and his eyes widen at the danger. Without hesitating, the young man warns them to watch out on the left because there is an enemy. With red eyes, a level 35 Trent monster suddenly appears in front of them. The monster attacks by surprise, and the girl screams her partner's name, worried about him. With a confident smile, the Lancer yells that he is fine and ready for the fight. He then calls his partner to fight, and the young woman agrees to attack the monster. The large wooden monster charges at the duo with wild fury. Fearlessly, the two Lancers jump into the air to deliver a combined attack. With their spears in hand, they prepare to strike the enemy with everything they have. At that, the duo attacks the Trent from both sides in a highly coordinated move. The shooter watches and thinks that this is how real adventurers move. The teammate then turns around and asks the rookie what he thought of their teamwork. The protagonist says it wasn't bad, and the young man gets annoyed, saying it was the best. The girl then scolds him and tells him to focus on the fight to finish it quickly. The Lancer agrees with his partner and prepares for the final strike against the monster. With a special skill, they trap the enemy in glowing threads of light. But suddenly, the young man's expression changes when he sees several monsters appearing. In the blink of an eye, dozens of Trents appear, surrounding the trio from all sides. His teammate then says it is the rookie's turn, and that they will provide backup if needed. With a confident smile, the young man says that is comforting and he will give it a try. Then, the shooter activates his creation skill, and a bright light shines in his hand. In seconds, he materializes a huge rotary machine gun in his hands. The duo's jaws drop, and they wonder what kind of crazy weapon that is. The creator thinks he could use a thermal scope to identify the enemies, but with a cold look, he concludes it doesn't matter if he destroys everything at once. Without hesitating, the young man pulls the trigger and starts shooting everywhere. A shower of projectiles flies out and hits all the monsters in front of him. His teammates are completely shocked by the scene, and the girl thinks he is amazing. The smoke clears, revealing a trail of destruction in the dark forest. With the weapon on his shoulder, he turns around and says he managed to handle the situation. The duo praises him for the feat, and the young man says it was a good job for a rookie. But on the inside, the two are completely shocked by the power they just witnessed. Suddenly, the protagonist senses something strange and stops, walking immediately. With a dark look, a voice says it finally managed to find the young man. A man in an orange jacket suddenly appears in front of the protagonist in the forest. The young man asks who he is, and the stranger is completely shocked by the question. With an angry face, the man yells, asking if he dares forget the great and powerful Lucas. He says he was humiliated in the wolf mine, and the teammates don't understand the situation at all. Then the man brags and proudly shows his level 75 3 to the shooter. The protagonist remembers he was only level 65 in the wolf mine. With a smug smile, the man asks if the young man noticed his new and powerful level. The young man says it has only been a week, and he managed to level up a lot in that time. He thinks that for this world's standards, his speed was quite efficient. Hungrily, Lucas yells that all of this was so he could finally defeat Alan. The shooter asks how he plans to settle this, since they aren't in a dungeon. The man draws his sword and says he won't do anything boring like before in the mine. He says they will have a one-on-one duel, and the young man asks about his friends. With an evil smile, the man reveals he got rid of those useless guys for good. The Lancer accuses him of playing dirty by challenging someone of a much lower level. With bloodshot eyes, the man tells the peanut gallery to shut up. The creator thinks anything goes, but doesn't recommend a one-on-one duel. The man then says not to act tough, because he knows the secret of his weapon. He says the weapon is strong against monsters, but doesn't work against humans at all. With a nasty look, he says the young man had better create a sword for the fight, but without a care, the shooter simply pulls his weapon's trigger. The man is completely shocked to see the projectile grazing his ear. In seconds, the bullet grazes his ear, and he screams in pain from the impact of the shot. Calmly, the young man apologizes and says his information is very outdated. He then says it was just a scratch, and that he will shoot dead center next time. Holding his ear, the man feels the pain from the wound he just received. Afraid, he says he will leave him alone for today and runs away from the forest. The Lancer is shocked to see him defeat a level 73 so easily. With hearts in her eyes, the girl says he is very cool, and her teammate gets startled. The trio moves on, and the young woman says he is reliable and much stronger than the two of them. The girl says she always thought creators were weak, but they can actually be quite strong. The young man says it is the perfect job for him, and asks why she chose to be a Lancer. At that, the teammate panics, thinking the rookie is going to steal his partner. Awkwardly, the young woman leans in and asks if the shooter has a girlfriend or something, but suddenly her partner yells and interrupts their conversation, giving them a big scare. He tells the girl to keep an eye on their surroundings, and she complains about his attitude. Then, he points at the young man and calls him over for an urgent strategy meeting. The girl is left clueless as her teammate drags the protagonist away. The young man asks why they need a private meeting and says all three of them should participate. With that, the Lancer reveals the meeting was just an excuse, and he has something to say. The protagonist just listens to the young man attentively, with a serious expression on his face. Suddenly, he drops to his knees and begs the shooter to stay away from his partner. He explains they are childhood friends, but his feelings go beyond friendship. With a red face, he confesses he is in love with her, and the young man is a problem. The protagonist just lets out a long sigh at all that dramatic situation. He thinks he doesn't want to waste time on this, and that it is better to just help them. Calmly, he says he has no interest in romance and offers to help his teammate. He suggests putting on a little show during the boss fight, and the young man asks what the plan is. With a serious look, the creator reveals that the first part of the plan is to fight alone. The Lancer gets worried and says that with his power, they won't even get a chance to fight. He explains he will lower his power to fake struggling, and then his teammate will save him. The shooter reveals the boss's weakness is mobility, and that it can be defeated solo. Overjoyed, the young man hugs the protagonist, who tells him to stop hugging right away. With the plan set, the two rejoin their partner and head toward the big boss. There, they spot the great Trent King, a giant tree with 3 red eyes. The Lancer is shocked by the monster's size and yells that it is simply enormous. The girl asks what the plan is, and the creator just tells them to stay back. The young woman leans on him and says she is counting on his strength, which makes her teammate jealous. Then, the protagonist activates his creation skill, and a bright light surrounds him. A glowing energy cube forms in his hand, ready to create a new weapon. In an instant, he creates an assault rifle, and the weapon's stats appear on the screen. The young man thinks he reduced the power as much as he could, but it shouldn't be a problem. The Lancer duo is shocked, and the young woman is impressed by yet another new weapon. He then explains it is a weaker rifle, but much easier to handle. With the weapon in hand, He runs and starts shooting at the monster to end the fight. The bullets hit the large monster, but it doesn't even seem to care about the small attacks. At that, his partner gets confused seeing that the attacks aren't working this time. The creator starts acting, pretending he messed up the settings and is going to be defeated. Taking his cue, the Lancer tells the rookie to leave it to him, and Hina warns him. With a smile, he tells his partner not to worry and just watch his heroism. Despite his confidence, the young woman still keeps a very worried expression on her face. The young man then shows off his skills, dodging the giant monster's attacks. He then prepares for a powerful attack and yells with all his might as he charges. With a mighty strike, the young man hits the great boss with his spear in a precise attack. With sparkling eyes, the girl praises her partner, saying he was simply amazing. The shooter praises him as a leader and thinks the plan will take a while, but it will work. Completely full of himself, the Lancer says it was nothing, and it was to be expected of him. He then starts provoking the large monster, asking if it is all size and nothing else. But suddenly, the young man realizes he made a huge mistake, and his expression changes. The giant monster then attacks him with everything it has, knocking him far away with a single blow. The girl screams in desperation as she watches her partner get completely defeated by the boss. The protagonist gets annoyed by his teammate's stupidity and wonders if he is serious. With red eyes, the Trent King gets ready to attack the fallen young man once again. Then, the monster unleashes a rain of thorns at the Lancer lying on the ground. Next to the creator, the girl is completely paralyzed with fear by the scene. On the ground, the young man can only scream as he waits for the great monster's final attack. With its red eyes, the monster prepares to attack the Lancer on the ground. Several spikes fly toward the young man, who braces for the worst. Next to the creator, his partner is completely paralyzed with fear at the whole scene. On the ground, the young man screams in desperation as he waits for the great monster's final blow. The shooter says the scene is hard to watch and creates a huge rocket launcher on the spot. Without a second thought, he fires at the monster, and an explosion destroys everything around them. The smoke clears, and his teammate is on the ground coughing next to the item the boss dropped. With that, the creator levels up and offers a potion to help the young man recover. The girl is shocked and asks if he really took down the Trent King in a single hit. She then grabs him by the arm and asks how he managed to do that so quickly. But in the background, the Lancer has a look of pure rage as he watches the two of them. He then yells at the newcomer not to interfere, saying he had everything under control. The young woman scolds him on the spot, saying you should be grateful when someone saves your life. She calls him an idiot, and the young man is left completely speechless by her lecture. With a smile, the girl apologizes to the shooter for her partner's rude attitude. The creator says he understands and that his teammate just wanted to look cool in front of her. The young woman then compliments him, saying that even though he struggled at first, he was amazing. At this, the Lancer cries with happiness, and his partner's eyes sparkle at him. The shooter says he only succeeded because his teammate had already cornered the large monster. He then says the victory belongs to the Lancer, but the girl looks very suspicious. His teammate takes the opportunity to brag, saying the newcomer just got in the way at the end. The young woman ignores her partner and whispers the creator's name with a look of admiration. Suddenly, she hugs him and says he is strong, humble, mature, and very cool. With hearts in her eyes, she invites him to get something to eat so they can get to know each other better. Seeing this, the Lancer's soul simply leaves his body out of sadness. The protagonist thinks this whole romantic situation is a huge headache. After the hunt, the trio returns to the clan headquarters to meet with the master. With a smile, the leader asks the two of them how the newcomer did on his first mission. The young woman says he was incredible and defeated the boss with a single huge explosion. He then explains that a guy from the Wolf Mine tried to pick a fight with him. The master asks if he's referring to a level 70 swordsman and recognizes the name Lucas. He explains that the man has caused trouble for clan members before, so they investigated him. The leader then suggests the newcomer use the clan's name if the guy bothers him again. With this, the young man realizes the intimidating power a top-tier clan truly has. but the master just smiles and says he's glad he is safe and unharmed. He then congratulates the trio on a job well done, and the three of them nod in agreement. Excited, the young woman suggests the four of them go out to dinner as a welcome party, but the leader declines because he still has work to do, which leaves the girl disappointed. So she says just the two of them will go out and holds his arm, leaving her teammate shocked. The master just warns them not to stay out too late, since there's work tomorrow. The trio is surprised, and the girl asks if something important suddenly came up. With a smile, he reveals that a new mission request has arrived for their group. He then explains that, to be more precise, the newcomer was specifically named for the task. The young man is surprised, and his partner praises him for being named on his first day in the clan. The leader says it's a special request and not a common defense mission like usual. They want the shooter to distribute his weapons to the residents, and he corrects them on the name. The master says he's never heard of that weapon and asks if the job is just to hand them out. The man confirms the request and reveals that the mission location will be in the city of Beyondall. The trio recognizes the name and realizes it's the city on the front lines against the Demon King. The leader explains that's why Lord Olivia wants the residents to use his weapons. He stresses that it's not a common mission and gives him the freedom to refuse if he doesn't want to go. But with a determined look, the protagonist says he will accept the mission without hesitation. He thinks it's a blessing to be able to distribute his weapons and level up faster. The master understands and asks if he can consider him to be officially joining the clan. The young man agrees and says it's no problem, as he had forgotten it was a test. But suddenly, he stops and thinks it's strange to nominate someone on a trial period. The master says the client will pay for the teleportation, and that clan policy requires a trio. At this, the girl gets excited and invites him to explore the city together after the mission. The young man tells her to go with their teammate, but the woman complains she only wants to go with the shooter. He then tells her she needs to be more considerate and that he's counting on her for the mission. Excited, the woman pulls him along to get going, leaving their jealous teammate behind. But the protagonist stops and turns to ask the master something before leaving. With a calm smile, the leader just listens attentively to the young man's question in the room. The young man then asks how the client knew he had joined the clan. Flynn explains that the member list is updated in real time and she must have seen it. The young man still asks how the lord of a border town would know who he is. The master stares at him and asks, with a serious look, if there's any problem with the mission. He says no, that he was just curious about the information on a rookie creator. The leader asks if he's going to refuse, and the young man accepts, and the trio leaves for the mission. With a serious look, the creator closes the door, leaving the man alone in the dark room. The next day, the trio prepares to leave for the city on a beautiful sunny day. On the way, his teammate asks if something is wrong, and the young man says it's nothing. But inside, he thinks that being nominated in less than half a day is very suspicious. He then wonders if the master isn't part of some Demon King faction. Just then, they arrive at the large, walled city of Beyondall to begin their mission. With a golden light, the trio is teleported inside the walls of the great city. The group then prepares to enter and begin their important mission in the city. But upon entering, they realize the streets are completely empty and silent. The protagonist notices that there's no one around and that the shops aren't even open. He also notices that the soldiers on the walls look completely exhausted. With a grim look, the young man concludes that the situation in the city doesn't look good at all. Suddenly, one of the soldiers shouts and warns them to watch out for what's behind them. The trio then turns around, confused, to see what's happening at the city gate. The Lancer is completely terrified by the creature that appears before them. A giant level 55 lizard suddenly appears in front of the trio. The girl is shocked to see that a boss monster managed to get this far. One of the soldiers prepares for a fight and yells that the monster is coming in hot. The lizard then attacks fiercely, launching the trio into the air with a single blow. In the air, the creator activates his ability, and an energy cube glows in his hand. A blue light surrounds him as he prepares to create a new, powerful weapon. With a rocket launcher, He says that attacking on arrival is a breach of etiquette. Still in the air, the young man fires at the monster, and a large explosion erupts in the city. He then lands safely as the smoke from the explosion clears. His partner is completely shocked at the scene of destruction before him. The girl is also dumbfounded and says they managed to defeat the monster. One of the soldiers questions what kind of weapon that was to take down the lizard in one go. The young woman praises him as always while the young man dispels the weapon with a glow in his hand. But one of the guards yells out, "Warning, the fight isn't over, and there are more enemies." Suddenly, several level 40 bird monsters appear in the city sky. The creator realizes that more enemy reinforcements have just arrived for the attack. With a wicked laugh, a man mounted on one of the monsters appears in the sky. He then flies at high speed toward the other giant birds in the air. With an axe in hand, the man attacks the monsters with a wild fury. The protagonist ends up getting hit by the remains of the defeated monsters from the attack. The man introduces himself as Gordo, the captain of the royal guard of the city of Beyondall. He says he came to welcome the group at Lady Olivia's request, and his status is hidden. The young man realizes he can't see the captain's status and becomes suspicious. Gordo then points to a carriage and asks the trio to board it with him. The two lancers are stunned by the luxurious carriage in front of them. The pair wonders if they aren't receiving a little too much special treatment here. The captain explains that the city is in crisis and expectations for the young man are high. He says that Lord Olivia hopes the creator's weapons will change the tide of the war. With a serious look, the protagonist understands the great responsibility he now has. He then walks toward the carriage and says he will meet their expectations, but inside, he wonders where the Demon King Preservation faction is. In a guild meeting room, a man sits alone at a large table. He reads a report stating that 5 assassins were defeated by the shooter. The report says the young man's clan went to Beyondall and they are tracking the target. Executive Zynid complains that the city is too far for their surveillance. Then he thinks about the young man's ability to create an unknown firearm. He says that Alan, the only creator, must be stopped before he becomes a problem. At this, the executive thinks that the young man will undoubtedly be a major obstacle in the future. Suddenly, a mysterious figure opens the door and apologizes for being late. The guild master greets him and calls him the #1 artisan in the entire kingdom. A man in a yellow suit enters the room and is revealed to be Hirashi, the creator. But the executive finds the girl next to him strange, saying she isn't the legendary blacksmith. The young woman then introduces herself as Annette, the blacksmith's daughter, and reveals she is level 13. With a smile, she says that in terms of knowledge, she can easily be compared to her father. The master says that if her father recommends her, then there's no problem at all. He then asks the two of them to come closer to begin the work immediately. Zynid places a weapon on the table and asks them to analyze its unique structure. The pair is surprised by the strange and different shape of the weapon on the table. Hiroshi picks it up, and the screen reveals it to be an assault rifle with 55 power. He notices that its use is similar to a crossbow and decides to test the new weapon. The man then fires at the armor, and several shots destroy everything quickly. The creator is completely shocked by the weapon's incredible firing speed. His partner says the level of whoever made this must be insane for it to have so much power. Hiroshi says that even at his level, it would be impossible to create something like that. The executive reveals that the creator's level when he made the weapon was only 15. The pair is dumbfounded by the revelation and can't believe it's true. The master says it's a fact, and that's why he hired them for this special mission. He asks them to analyze the weapon and create a copy, even if it's an inferior one. The girl holds the weapon and says that the attack power is influenced by the creator. She thinks that if Hiroshi makes the copy, the attack power will be 10 times greater. With a serious look, the executive confirms the young blacksmith's suspicion. He then gives a wicked smile and says the effort will certainly be worth it. With his eyes gleaming, he reveals that he's going to create an army of weapon artisans. At this, he thinks about the original creator and decides he will simply eliminate him soon. In Beyondall, the trio arrives at the Lord's mansion to finally meet her. They enter a large audience hall and see the leader sitting on the throne. The woman thanks them for coming and introduces herself as Olivia, the ruler. With a confident smile, the blonde woman looks at them and shows her status as the city's leader. The young man says the pleasure is his and thanks her for the opportunity she gave him. His teammate scolds him, saying he needs to speak more politely. But the ruler just smiles and tells the girl that it's no problem at all. The shooter thinks she's quite tolerant and asks where he should distribute the weapons. She then asks him to explain how the weapon works and if it's safe for the people. The creator agrees, and a blue energy surrounds his body as he creates the item. With a look of surprise, the ruler watches the young man create the weapon from scratch. The weapon appears in his hands, and he presents it to the leader as an assault rifle. Two knights in the room are surprised and comment on the newly created weapon. Suddenly, the guard next to the throne rushes toward the group to test the weapon. The young man explains that there are several types, but the basics are the same for all of them. Without a second thought, he shoots the guard, who screams in pain from the shots. The man yells and questions him, but the young man says he shot without thinking because it was easy. The leader praises him and says that with a weapon like this, even ordinary citizens can fight. She thinks that if they shoot from the walls, the danger will be low and the soldier's burden will decrease. The girl then turns to the leader and asks for permission to ask a question. The young woman then asks why they are making civilians participate in the war. With a serious look, the ruler asks what the young woman means by that. She says she thought the soldiers and defense clans would be enough for the war. The leader explains that the problem is the cost of maintaining the clans, which the kingdom doesn't cover. She says the Demon King's army attacks every few months, but they must be prepared. Maintaining so many defense clans has a huge cost and is driving the city to bankruptcy. The young man explains to his partner that they hired too many people and ran out of money. With the weapons, maintenance costs can be reduced and the economy can be restored. The shooter explains that urgent means it's something important and can't wait. The young woman is impressed and compliments him, but he tells her not to get excited over the basics. Their teammate then asks what the two of them are doing and asks for his senpai's support, but the creator cuts the conversation short and says he wants to start the mission as soon as possible. The leader agrees and says they will set up a distribution point in the central square. The young man explains that the weapons don't harm humans and can be used without worry. With that, he hands one of the weapons to the ruler, who thanks him for his help. The guard then says with a serious look that he will be counting on the young artisan's help. At this, the trio is escorted to the square to begin the distribution of the new weapons. On the throne, the leader analyzes the weapon and sees it has 95 attack power. She then asks her guard what he thinks of that new and powerful weapon. He says its performance is incredible and that the young man's trick is extraordinary. The ruler comments that it's no wonder the guild is in such an uproar. The guard explains that the weapon's power depends on the creator's stats and base attack, but the young man's level is very low, and he isn't even using any power accessories. With this, she wonders if the creator could become the weapon to defeat the Demon King. The guard confidently states that the possibility is more than enough for that. The leader understands the situation and seems to have a plan in mind for the future of the war. With a smile, she thinks she was right to invite him to her city. Meanwhile, in the city's central square, the trio prepares for the distribution. Several people gather around, curious about the new weapons being given out. One of the civilians holds a rocket launcher and doubts that it's actually a weapon. But the screen shows that the weapon has 6,750 attack power. After the mission, the trio goes to a tavern to eat and relax for a bit. The creator eats pizza while creating something, and his teammate is impressed by the skill. He explains that this isn't the first time he's distributed weapons to people. His partner then asks if the young man doesn't use any kind of power accessories. She says that if he used the items, his weapons would be even stronger than usual. He agrees and his stats show 56 attack and 56 defense. His teammate drinks and complains that it must be nice to be strong enough to ignore equipment. The young woman comes closer and says he doesn't need items, and the Lancer gets jealous. But the creator says he prefers defensive accessories to feel safer in fights. He thinks that this isn't a game, and that if he's taken out, it's the end of the line for him. Suddenly, his teammate breathes fire, and his partner is startled by the scene. A knight runs into the tavern, and the trio is completely confused. He then announces that the Demon King's army is attacking the city right now. The pair is shocked by the news, and doesn't know what to do with the information. But the creator faces the situation with a calm and determined look on his face. Outside, the sound of horse hooves echoes throughout the large city. A horde of dark monsters advances toward the city walls. From atop the walls, it's possible to see the size of the approaching enemy army. The trio and some civilians prepare for battle with the new weapons in hand. One of the adventurers questions why there are civilians mixed in the middle of the battle. Another one notices they are carrying weapons with a very strange shape. The protagonist teaches one of the civilians how to use the rocket launcher for the attack. The pair gets excited and prepares to fire, while the young man asks them not to drop it. A witch comments that they seem very excited and must be from a weak clan, but her partner smiles, and the status reveals they are from the Holy Guardian clan. The group is shocked to learn they are from a super important clan. One of the men says the level 28 creator is bothering him. With a focused gaze, the young man watches the enemy army getting closer and closer. He then realizes that these are the remnants of the Demon King's army. The young man notices that the number of enemies is huge, and their levels are around 50. One of the knights then yells and orders everyone to prepare their ranged attacks. With that, the civilians aim their rocket launchers at the approaching army. Nearby, a mage and an archer also prepare for the big attack. The knight then yells with all his might and orders everyone to fire at the same time. Two of the civilians fire their rocket launchers, and the missiles fly through the sky. Several arrows and missiles fly toward the army for the first attack. The creator watches the attack with a serious look while holding his weapon. A huge golden explosion destroys everything and illuminates the battlefield. Pair coughs from the smoke, and their teammate is shocked by the power of the explosion. With that, the level up screen appears, and he goes from level 28 to 30. The captain of the knights is completely shocked and breaks into a cold sweat at the scene. With just one attack, half of the enemy army was wiped out on the battlefield. One of the civilians asks if they can use the weapons again, and the young man tells them to wait. He then reloads the item and tells everyone to give the enemies another round. The civilians fire happily, saying they don't need to fear the Demon King's army. The pair of adventurers is shocked and says they've never seen anything like it. The captain thinks that the power of the weapons is immense when used by a large group. The creator warns him that the enemies who escaped the attack are getting closer. From the top of the wall, they see the monsters approaching, and the young man asks for new orders. The captain tells the civilians to fall back and orders the archers to prepare to fight. The archers get ready, and the leader yells for them to fire at the remaining monsters. The other group of adventurers sits down, as it seems there won't be a turn for them. Suddenly, the captain raises his arm with the metal gauntlet high in the air. He then announces that the battle is over and that all enemies have been defeated. The civilians call him a hero and thank him, as the fight was over in the blink of an eye. His partner asks why he's not happy, and the young man says he missed his chance to level up. She then reminds him that his level rose to 30, and he gained 2 levels at once. He explains that without the level cap, he should have gone up at least 10 levels. At this, the young woman remembers the beginner's trial that limits their power. The system prevents adventurers from going past level 30 without taking a test. The young man laments because there won't be another chance to defeat so many enemies at once. He then thinks that if the attack had happened a few days later, it would have been much better. Suddenly, the city's leader and her guard approach the group on the city walls. With a smile, the ruler claps her hands and congratulates him on the great work he's done. The group of adventurers comments on the leader's beauty, and one of them compliments her. The woman says she intended to see the strength of the weapons, but the fight was already over. She then asks if the weapons he gave out are different from the ones she received. The young man explains that he made area of effect weapons and asks if he made a mistake. The ruler says no and that thanks to him, the defense of the residents is possible. She then announces that she will be terminating the contracts of all defense clans in the city. At this, the other group of adventurers is completely shocked by the news. The leader offers to triple their contract as a fee for using the new weapons. The pair celebrates and praises the young man for securing such an important contract. Desperate, one of the men begs her not to do that to the small clans. With a cold look, the woman asks what their survival has to do with the city. The group of adventurers is left completely speechless by the ruler's response. She explains that if they are no longer needed, it's natural to terminate the contracts. One of the residents agrees, saying they could barely survive with the costs. The guard calls them useless and says the people had to fight because of them. Another citizen yells for them to get out of there and calls them tax thieves. With a wave, the leader dismisses the group of adventurers, who are devastated by the scene. She says she will cover the teleportation costs as a small apology. With a look of pure rage, the adventurer curses the woman as he leaves with his group. His teammate then wonders if they just stole someone else's job. The ruler tells him not to worry about it, and the young man is very confused. She explains that thanks to the creator, all the residents of the city have found peace. With that, the leader tells him to be proud of bringing smiles to the city. She then asks him to bring smiles to the other cities fighting in the war. With a smile, the pair eagerly agrees to the new mission they received. In the background, the dismissed adventurer overhears the conversation with a worried look. He then realizes that if the weapons spread, they will be out of a job forever. The creator decides to go back to distributing weapons because he wants to get to his tests soon. With eyes full of hatred, the man blames the shooter for his clan's entire situation. He thinks everything would be better if the young creator had never shown up there. Suddenly, the man calls out to him and asks to take a look at his different weapon. The young man finds the request strange, but turns to show the weapon to the man on the wall. With a wicked smile, the adventurer prepares to attack the creator by surprise. Without a second thought, the man kicks the young man with all his strength to knock him down. From the surprise attack, the young man is thrown off the wall and begins to fall. The ruler watches the entire scene with a serious and expressionless look. The man says he won't make it from that height, and as a creator, he can't do anything. With a wicked smile, he says it would be a problem if the weapons were to spread. With a powerful, unexpected kick, the adventurer sends the creator flying off the city wall. Watching this unfold, one of the guards is stunned by what just happened. The protagonist then begins to fall from a huge height, and the man watches him from above. As he's free-falling, the young man is furious and wonders what that guy was thinking. Meanwhile, his companions scream desperately, urging him to do something. The young man thinks that this can't be his end, and holds his weapon tightly. With a determined look, he refuses to accept this fate. He then points his bazooka downward with a crazy plan in mind. The marksman fires a huge explosion that heads toward the ground. Seeing this, the adventurer is shocked and wonders why he shot at the ground. The leader and her guard watch the scene, completely surprised by the young man's actions. The shockwave from the explosion pushes him upward, softening his fall. He soon lands safely, and his friends rush over to see if he's okay. He says the explosion cushioned the impact, but adds that he never wants to do that again. The knight breaks into a cold sweat, wondering if that's even possible. The ruler and her guard observe the boy, without showing any reaction. His partner then offers him a healing potion to help him recover. The attacker watches the group reunite and realizes his plan has failed. With a red aura and a look of hatred, the young man turns to face his enemy. The man trembles in fear at the marksman's thirst for revenge. The creator then makes a platform and tells his partners to stay back. He launches himself into the air with the platform, and his friends wonder how he flew. The young man lands in front of the man who attacked him and glares at him with hatred. At this, the adventurer is shocked by the creator's speed and skill. The people around them comment that he created a platform and launched himself with it. Even a pair of experienced adventurers are surprised by what he did. He then creates a pistol and says The man is part of the Demon King's faction. Desperate, the attacker gets on his knees and begs not to be taken out. But the young man points the weapon and asks, who said he was going to spare him. Suddenly, a voice tells him to wait, and the leader's group approaches. The protagonist looks to the side, annoyed, and asks why they're stopping him. The woman says that if he eliminates him there, he'll be held responsible for it. He argues that it was self-defense, but she says that doesn't change anything. Besides, the leader says she doesn't want to taint their victory with casualties. The young man understands the situation and reluctantly puts his weapon away. He then turns and walks away, leaving the man kneeling on the ground. The attacker breathes a sigh of relief, thinking he managed to escape the situation. But a catapult appears next to him, and the creator watches from a distance. With that, the man is launched far away from the city walls. The leader is left completely shocked and speechless by the young man's actions. He then comments that the catapult is a prototype, and its power is still a bit weak. Meanwhile, the man screams in desperation through the air, and the creator says there's room for improvement. At that moment, the young artisan creates a large gel cushion to break his fall. With that, the man lands on the object and manages to touch down safely on the ground. The attacker is left breathless and terrified after the life-threatening experience. With the cushion deflated, he lies on the ground, realizing he barely survived. The marksman says he'll go easy on him this time, but next time, he'll send him to the bottom for good. Trembling with fear, the man apologizes and thanks him for being spared. The young man thinks that it's hard to defend against people who attack on impulse. He reflects that he needs a way to distribute weapons without provoking others. The next day, the trio says their goodbyes, and the young man says he's heading back to the capital. He mentions he's going to take the adventurer exam and asks his friends to report to Flynn. But his partner says the achievement was his, and he should be the one to tell him. The young man says he'd rather have experience points, and someone calls out for him to wait. It was the captain of the Royal Guard, and the girl recognizes him instantly. The man says he knows they've finished their mission and wants to consult them about something else. With a serious look, he asks the group for help with a bandit hunt. The trio is surprised, and the marksman repeats the captain's words, confused. He explains that there's a large hideout in the forest that threatens the city. The girl finds it strange, but her friend calls her an idiot for the question. The guard then promises the highest possible reward if they cooperate, but the protagonist refuses the offer, saying he wants to get back to his exam. As the trio turns to leave, the man asks them to wait. He then offers to pay with information, and this gets the young man's attention. With a focused gaze, the young man wonders what kind of information it could be. The captain reveals that he has data on the faction that wants to protect the Demon King. The marksman turns around and remains silent, waiting for the rest of the proposal. He says that members of the faction have already infiltrated the young man's inner circle. The protagonist's friend gets nervous and stammers, trying to explain himself. The creator asks if he'll tell him who the members are if he cooperates. The guard says his duty is to follow the leader's orders, but there's a higher priority. The young man then thinks that dealing with this faction is the most important thing right now. He accepts the job on the condition that he receives the information, and the man thanks him. The captain glances to the side, and the creator takes the opportunity to ask a question. He wants to know why a soldier is asking for help to hunt down bandits. The man reveals that it was Olivia herself who decided to ask for his help. He thinks it's because the leader holds him in high regard at the moment. The protagonist repeats the word favorite with a dark look on his face. With a smile, the captain says he will accompany them on the mission against the bandits. The marksman then asks his two friends to go back and report to Flynn, but his partners protest, saying they'll go with him since they know how to fight too. With a serious look, he says it's a personal request and that he can handle this alone. The captain agrees, saying that two of them are enough for the mission. Even so, his friends insist, saying the rule is to operate in trios. With a smile, the guard gives in and agrees they can go as a group of 4. The captain then starts to lead them, and the group follows him down the path. The marksman looks back with a thoughtful expression on his face. As they walk, he notices that the atmosphere in the city has improved a lot. The residents wave to them and seem much happier and safer. Following the captain, the young artisan begins to reflect on the situation. He thinks that Olivia is definitely part of the Demon King's faction. The young man remembers that she only showed him weapons that don't work on humans, and as soon as he raised the pistol, she immediately declared it would be a crime. From this, he realizes she knows that unrestricted weapons can be lethal. The young man understands this is a secret and that the mission could be a trap. In his thoughts, the captain shows a dark aura and wants to end the problem. The group then enters the forest, and the man says the bandits are deep inside. He then leads the way, asking everyone to follow him to the hideout. The marksman's friend says that he and the girl can handle the forest monsters, but the protagonist says no, explaining they don't need to enter the woods for the mission. He then takes a drone out of his inventory, saying he can attack from right there. The captain is shocked and asks what that piece of iron is. The young man explains that it's a drone and that it will find and take out the bandits on its own. His partners are impressed with the creation, and he says this way is safer. He prepares to give the order to attack the bandits hiding in the forest. Suddenly, the guard captain shouts desperately, telling him to wait. The man says he's against this method because the drone might harm potential hostages. The young man replies that he'll order it to only attack those who are armed, but the captain insists, saying that even so, it won't work for him. With a serious look, the creator asks why he's so opposed to the idea. He explains that there could be crossfire, and he wants to ensure everyone's safety. The protagonist finds it strange that the topic of hostages came up so suddenly. He then tells the captain to go in alone, and that he'll provide support with the drone. The marksman says that as a level 30 artisan, he doesn't need to go in person. Furious, the guard yells that's not happening, and that it goes against her orders. The young man realizes that the man wants to get him into the forest no matter what. He agrees that it would be against orders and asks if they should proceed. With a smile, he understands that the captain's real target is his life. The group of 4 then continues to walk through the dark and silent forest. The girl comments that there are no monsters, and her friend says that's a good thing. Suddenly, the marksman stops his friends and tells them to wait a moment. He points to a rope on the ground and warns them that it's a trap. With that, the young man shows them a log with spikes that would have fallen on them. The young man says the bandits must have set the trap rather clumsily. His partner panics, but the marksman scolds him for moving without thinking. He explains that there's a limit to the traps that can be made with this world's technology. He then cuts the rope, and the log falls to the ground without hurting anyone. The creator says he could even handle landmines, leaving his friends confused. Hidden from view, the captain watches the group with a suspicious and mysterious look. Soon, they arrive at a small village, and the guard says this is the hideout. Seeing so many enemies, the girl wonders if their group is large enough. With a watchful eye, the protagonist calmly analyzes the situation. The captain prepares for battle, and a ring on his hand begins to glow. The magical object on his finger emits a strong, mysterious purple light. The marksman tells them to follow the captain, as he seems to have a plan in mind. Suspicious, the guard wonders if the young artisan has noticed anything strange, but he doesn't care and, with a wicked smile, thinks he has the advantage here. The creator's partner then turns to the guard and asks what the plan is. He creates an axe and says that first, he'll advise the bandits to surrender. The creator agrees with the idea and closes his eyes, seeming relaxed. The captain then starts walking ahead and asks the young man to follow him. As they do, the group approaches the camp, and the bandits notice their presence. The young man's friends get nervous about approaching so openly. With his axe glowing, he introduces himself and calls for the bandit chief. A shadowy figure opens the door and complains that he was tired of waiting. It was the bandit chief, who says with a smile that the guard took too long. He then notices the trio and asks why the captain brought company. The guard says they're just fools and tells the chief not to worry about them and to just eliminate them. At this, the 2 friends are completely shocked by the captain's betrayal, but the protagonist just smiles and says things are going just as he expected. The guard then asks the bandit chief for an additional payment for the mission. The bandit notices the girl and asks if he can keep her, but he's told no. He laments this but says they can have their fun with her before everything happens. The young man's friend yells furiously, asking the captain what's going on. The marksman then calmly explains that this man is their enemy. With a serious look, he understands that the guard's true goal is to eliminate him. The captain of the Royal Guard shows a wicked smile, full of bad intentions. The girl asks why, and the young man says it seems like he's in the way. With his eyes glowing, he reveals that the guard is part of the Demon King's faction. The marksman's partner is left completely speechless by this huge revelation. The bandit chief says he's been exposed, but the guard doesn't care. He boasts that they have much higher levels and are greater in number. The young man's partner is shocked and remembers the information about the faction. The marksman explains that the captain was talking about himself and lured them into a trap. With a smile, the guard confirms his suspicion and says he's impressed with the young man. Without wasting a second, the protagonist fires an energy shot at the traitor. His companions are shocked by the young man's speed in action. The bandit chief is also startled by the sudden and unexpected attack. The creator then holds his pistol and asks if he was interrupting their conversation. The guard takes the hit, but just looks up with a mocking smile, with red eyes. The young man says he couldn't care less about any of it. A jewel on the guard's chest glows, and he says the conversation is over. The marksman's friends wonder why his attack didn't work. It was the ring of absolute barrier, which nullifies attacks from stronger targets. The level 125 guard laughs and says no attack will work on him. The young man remains calm, even with the probability of victory being 0. His partners start to panic, saying it's impossible to win like this. But the creator tells them to relax and says there's no problem at all. The captain becomes suspicious and questions the young marksman's confidence. He reveals that he knew the guard was equipped with the ring the whole time. Annoyed, the traitor tells him to stop acting tough and orders the attack. The bandit chief then leads his men and charges forward into battle. With that, several enemies rush toward the young creator to attack him. The protagonist just gives a small smirk at the scene. He then opens his inventory and says he'll show them if he's just bluffing. He then summons a large number of drones that he built himself. With that, a massive army of attack drones fills the entire sky. The bandits are shocked and wonder what those things in the air are. The young artisan prepares to give the attack order to his creations. He then commands the drones, and they begin to fire at the enemies. The bandits are hit dead on and scream in pain from the attacks. The bandit chief is also hit and can't escape the shots. The captain watches the scene with a serious look as a drop of sweat rolls down his face. Meanwhile, the protagonist calmly observes the result of his attack. The drones continue their relentless assault on all the enemies there. In seconds, all the bandits are defeated, and the chief is in shock. Desperate, he says this has to be a joke and tries to flee the battlefield, but the marksman quickly shoots the bandit chief to stop him. With the clean shot, the man falls to the ground, completely defeated. The young man turns to the guard and says his group was completely useless. Furious, the guard stomps on the chief and says he's sick of keeping trash around. His friends find his attitude heartless, and the young man asks about the plan. The traitor reveals he was going to use the bandits and then finish off the creator. He then grips his axe tightly and says there's nothing left to do. With a powerful red aura, the guard prepares for the final battle. He says playtime is over and now it's time to begin the hunt. The man then activates his warrior ability to increase his strength. He continues using his skills like Warrior's Roar and Aura of Tenacity, and to finish, he activates Berserker's Soul and Valiant Enchantment. His partners are amazed by the number of enhancements. The marksman realizes he's aiming for a quick and decisive battle. The guard taunts them, saying the hunt is more exciting if the prey runs. With a wicked smile, he tells them to scurry around as much as they can, but the protagonist just lies down on the ground and says he's happy with the situation. He says he's happy because the guard is a complete idiot. With that, the young man activates his creation ability with an intense blue light. In the blink of an eye, a metal cage appears and traps the guard captain. His friends are completely shocked and don't understand what just happened. The creator says he stepped into his range, and the guard yells in fury. He then tries to break the cage with his axe, using all his strength, but the weapon chips against the cage, and he's shocked by its durability. He wonders if it's a magical item, but the young man just watches him. The young man explains that it's a super hard alloy, and he can't break it. The guard then grinds his teeth in pure rage and frustration at the scene. He screams and tells the marksman to stop messing with him from inside the cage. With the force of the impact, the captain's axe shatters into several pieces. His eyes glow with hatred, but he can't do anything against the cage. The young man says he needed to avoid the fight because he couldn't have defeated him. The guard feels humiliated for being trapped by someone like the marksman. He admits that a normal fight would have been impossible, but now it's too late. The creator then says that making the impossible possible is what he does. The captain breaks into a cold sweat, unable to believe what's happening. His friends celebrate the victory and congratulate him on his incredible skill. The young man explains that the cage has no lock, and only he can open it. Annoyed, the guard knows the young man is right and that he's trapped. He then grabs the bars of the cage and realizes there's no way out. Desperate, the captain asks for forgiveness and begs the young man to free him. He kneels and says he has reflected on his mistakes from the bottom of his heart. His friends don't believe it and think he's lying to escape. The guard insists it's true, but in his thoughts he confirms the lie. In his mind, the traitor plans to eliminate everyone as soon as the cage opens, enduring any humiliation. The pair warns the creator that he can't save a guy like this, telling him they should go back and tell their master everything. The protagonist agrees with his partners and tells the traitor he's just going to leave him there to waste away. Desperate, the prisoner begs for mercy and promises to do anything if the marksman opens the cage. With a very cold look, the young artisan asks if the man would do absolutely anything to save himself. The captain frantically confirms his promise, and so the creator decides to give him one condition for his release. The young man creates a voice recorder and demands that the traitor tell him all the information about the Demon King's faction. His partners are amazed by the boy's invention, who then tells the man to start talking about everything he knows. The captain grinds his teeth in pure rage and frustration, realizing his words will be fully recorded. Turning his back, the marksman calmly waits for the prisoner to start revealing all the faction's secrets. But the man gives a wicked smile in his thoughts, believing none of this will matter if he takes down the young man. Gripping the bars, the traitor agrees to tell the truth, demanding the cage be opened before he confesses. The protagonist emits an intimidating aura and warns that he'll only let him go after hearing all the information. The captain clicks his tongue, feeling immense anger for failing to trick the clever artisan with his plan. Defeated, the man kneels, accepting the conditions and begging to be released as soon as he's done talking. With a slight smile on his face, the creator agrees to release the guard as soon as he finishes his confession. His friends are very worried about the danger and try to warn him that making this deal is a huge mistake. The young man reassures the pair, saying it's no problem and asking them to keep a close watch on the surrounding area. He also asks them to put magic stones in the deactivated drones, as they're completely out of power. The pair understands the order and goes to complete the task, asking the marksman to be very careful with the prisoner. The young artisan stands firm on the ground as he waits for the traitor to begin revealing the secrets. With a threatening aura and a deadly gaze, the protagonist holds the recorder, telling the man to start talking. The guard captain then puts on a very serious expression and begins to tell everything about the Shadow faction.